quiet. Makes me nervous when that happens. Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning at our City Council study session, or work session. We'll go ahead and get started. Ruth, could you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Adamson?
Here.
Bray? Cheatham?
Here.
Lorick?
Here.
Johnston?
Here.
Manon?
Here.
Platt?
Here. Thank you. We'll move to agenda item number 2 is the Animal Shelter Advisory Board update. Representatives from the Animal Shelter Advisory Board will discuss the board's goals and projects as well as council's policies and expectations. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Council. Thank you for having us. I was at the meeting last year and I chose not to do a PowerPoint, so too complicated. So I just
You should have brought some dogs or cats.
Yes.
Show and tell.
I did put together a flyer, which you should have a copy in front of you.
If we brought them, we were going to leave them.
I was going to say, if you want to see dogs and cats, go there.
Okay.
The first thing I was going to do was thank you for your time, but I also wanted to thank other members of the board. At this time, I don't see any of the other members, so they're probably all working.
Would you, before we get too far down the road, would you introduce yourself for the people watching at home?
Okay. Yeah, my name is Dan Lenahan. I am currently the appointed chairperson of the Animal Shelter Advisory Council. And with me, Josh.
You asked us to stand, right? Oh, I thought you did. I'm sorry. I apologize. It's my first one. So, my name is Josh Hines. I'm the shelter supervisor at the Pocatello Animal Shelter.
So, and then on the handout that I provided you, it has the names of our current members of the advisory council. We currently have no vacancies on the council until next February. And I was going to recognize Councilman Bray for his assistance. He's our liaison to the advisory council, and he's been doing a great job, helping us out quite a bit. So, based on the email that I saw, I presumed the council wanted to know about our goals. So I did network with our members, and we came up with just 3 basic goals. The one is to continue educating the public. Letters to the editor, just networking out in the community, letting people know what's going on with the city council. Our members are very diverse and across the community as leaders and business owners, and well connected with Humane Society and other organizations. So we're trying to educate the community on what's going on with the shelter, which leads right to the next one, which is networking with stakeholders. What we found over the last 12 months anyway is these other agencies, the Friends of the Shelter, the Humane Society, PAWS, and so forth, they're all out there trying to do the same thing that we're doing. They're trying to make things better for our community as far as animal control, and they're helping us out. They also all have a very strong opinion about how to run the city animal shelter, so, which is fine. And one of our other goals is to continue to support the shelter staff. We realize they're city employees and they're subject to HR and other things, but between the volunteer staff and training, we just, as an advisory board, we want to make sure that the staff is being taken care of. So those are our goals. As far as projects, the big one on the table for the last year has been the Trap, Neuter, and Replace TNR program. Our advisory council has been talking about it for over a year, and back in February we finally had it as an action item and voted on it. And our vote was to approve recommending the TNR program to the city of Pocatello. So it is on record. How the city goes forward with standing up a program such as that, the logistics involved, it's pretty complicated. So we're going to continue talking about it every month and keep pushing the agenda forward for the city. Another project we are working on, this started with the previous director. The goal was to address the rabies ordinance, and it was as simple as when a dog or when an animal bites a human, the animal has to be quarantined. What we were trying to do is if an animal bites another animal, to remove the quarantine issue, get that off the table. So, if a couple of dogs get in a scrap, we don't need to quarantine both of them. So that's the goal of revising that. And The Title VI of the city ordinance is pretty complicated as far as rabies, quarantine, disease control. So we're just keeping that on the table once a month, keep talking about it, and see if it really does need updated or not. And that's all I have. We appreciate the fact that Josh has been a long-term city employee with the shelter, and his experience now has him in place as the shelter supervisor, so we're real happy about that as an advisory council.
We're pretty happy about it also. So
Yeah.
it's good to
And then-
good to have Josh there.
Let me not forget Captain Ron Knapp. He's been tremendous help to our council as well, and we appreciate his work and the council and the city for putting him in that position. So with
Fantastic. We have a question, it looks like.
Yes, sir.
Dan, you talked in terms of the networking with the other stakeholders. Has there been such a thing as a meeting together with all these groups to talk about mutual concerns?
Not that I know of. No, sir.
I would think that would be a worthwhile endeavor.
Well, some of our members of the advisory council are also members of the Humane Society and the Friends of the Shelter and PAWS, and so they have connections within the groups. But a sit down meeting face to face with everybody would be a great idea.
We have so many animals that we cherish. It would appear to me that we should put all concerns together in some way, and that might be a beginning.
Mr. Mayor, what's been the holdup on the TNR program? What do we need to do?
Well, we talked about it. It was brought up a year ago, and then we invited the organization Best Friends out of Utah, came up, and they explained how the program works and how it's been successful in other communities around the nation. And they even offered a grant, verbally offered a grant of $40,000 to the city to start the program. And it's my understanding that Idaho Falls did that and took advantage of that opportunity. But it has to be sustainable. The following year, you have to have a budget, staffing, and enough money to continue the program. So, but in our February meeting, we made it an action item, and I said enough, we're done talking about this, let's vote on it. Either we're gonna recommend it to the city, or we're gonna just move on. And so we voted in favor of pursuing the TNR program. So
There's more to it than just the budget. So the law's going to have to be changed. Because there's a state code, and I don't have it in front of me, I apologize. I wasn't aware I was coming up here today. But there's a state mandate that says that if you offer any animal vet care, you now own that animal. So if we as a city start owning these animals that we are trapping and releasing, how then do we charge someone else for their animal running at large? So we'd have to change the law in some aspect.
Change the state law?
Change not just the state law, maybe our city law to adapt to that law. There's more to it than just adding the budget.
Well, there's that, and then it's, believe it or not, been a very controversial thing out there. I mean, I've been hit hard on both sides, and there's good arguments to trap and release, and there's good arguments to not release.
Trap and kill?
Yeah, and so the advisory board has done a yeoman's job in trying to figure out what to do with it, and because it really truly is. I'm assuming, I'm willing to bet that some of those advisory board meetings, there's been some people that their tempers have flared up, and because of this very thing. So it's not it's an interesting issue to navigate through. And so,
well, and everybody was tasked with researching the program on the advisory council, and we all agreed that it does reduce euthanasia. It does reduce the number of animals. So another thing to think about is the city animal shelter right now is considered a kill shelter because they have no choice. If we bring feral cats in and they're not adoptable, how much resources are we going to spend? We're going to do spaying and neutering them, releasing them back to the community just to find out they're still not sociable. So there's
and then there's a holding aspect. So we all understand, we all probably agree that there's a cat problem in every city, and we're at the shelter, we're full. So when we go out and trap these cats and bring them in, we have to hold them for however many days. And then we fix them, and then we hold them until they get better, and then we put them back out. So say that's a 5-day hold. And then, so we're going out trapping all these animals. We go out and say we pick up 20 cats, and we hold 20 cats. Well, then now we still have city cats coming in, surrounding area cats coming in. Yes, we have a very big, nice facility, but we fill it up really quick.
Cats, you got too many cats out there, and
All the time.
they're full all the time with cats.
And
Here's a good question. How did Idaho Falls get around the law issue? They're doing it.
right, that's
Yeah.
one thing. I just took the supervisor position 4 or 5 weeks ago. One of my agendas is to get up there and talk with them.
Okay.
I have talked with some of their officers, but I want to talk to their head, the director, and see how they got around that.
Because I've looked into the program up there, and it seems to be working quite well.
Yeah,
and it
yeah.
definitely has lowered euthanasia
Yeah,
rates.
so I don't know how they got around it. Again, this
Okay.
is, I'm kind of stepping into all of this, so this was all voted on before I got here.
Just
so.
something to consider and look at and find
Yes.
out.
Well, if the advisory committee has voted to do this, it looks like the onus is on the council.
Well, I think so, but I think when the advisory board comes to us with the program of how to actually implement it, I think then it's the onus is on the council.
They haven't actually made the
To
recommendation.
yeah, well, they voted on that. That's the thing that we ought to do. Now they're finding out how to implement that and what to do with that. So,
And we understand the logistics behind implementing this type of program. But as the community grows, so will the animal control population and city issues.
Mr. Mayor, one other question. Josh, in one of the city publications, we talk about 12,000 cats, 11,000 dogs. Are those figures anywhere close to what our population is?
Outside or inside the shelter throughout the year.
I'm talking in terms of outside the shelter.
Here in the city of Pocatello, the last, and don't quote me, I was 100%. The last time I remember seeing something, it said, I think it's 1.5 animals per household.
1.5 animals
Per household. So if you want to do the math, and don't quote me on that exactly, because I have to find the actual, our,
Well, if we had 20,000 households, that's a lot of cats and dogs.
yeah, and you figure that's just owned animals. These aren't the feral cats that are being fed by people that are, because they feel bad for them, things like that. That's not counting the cat population in general.
Sure.
And as an advisory council, again, we just had enough information. We recommend it to the city. We recommend that the city pursue the program, and we understand the logistics involved. And I think one thing that the previous director brought to our monthly meetings was data, and we need to continue doing that. How many animals were brought in this month? How many animals were euthanized? How many animals have this type of disease? And at the end of the year, you can have 12 months worth of data, and I think any program that the city wants to adopt needs to be data-driven. So that's whichever software, whichever program the shelter's using, and I haven't had this discussion with Ron yet, but data needs to be tracked.
sure.
Because then maybe it'll justify yes or no on the program.
Absolutely.
I'd like to talk about the quarantine issue too.
Okay.
When we go through the quarantine problem, what have been the usual results? Any diseases found, any cause for the need for quarantine justified?
No, the quarantine it's a 10-day hold. So and I can answer this from the officer standpoint and from coming office. So when we go to a dog bite, if the officer comes out there, it's kind of our discretion. We can either seize the animal and do the quarantine at the shelter, or if we believe the owner will do the quarantine at their home. During that 10-day quarantine, the animal has to remain inside the house. We allow them to take the animal out on a leash, go to the bathroom, and then right back in the house. They can't take the dog for walks, anything like that. It's quarantined. After the quarantine, they have to get cleared by a vet. So we haven't had, I can't think of any off the top of my head that we've had that have come back rabid, but that's what it's for. And one of the questions is my dog's already vaccinated. Well, we treat it the same way as, like, if you got a flu shot, you can still get the flu type stuff. So we still quarantine it to be safe. We get a lot of dog on dog or dog bites that we end up quarantining at the owner's home. Very rare do we take them to the shelter. If it's mostly extreme cases that we end up taking the dog to the shelter. So, does that answer your question?
So what needs to be done with our ordinance then?
Basically what they're asking is we still quarantine when an animal bites a human. They're asking that if like there's a couple dogs and they get into whatever, they're nipping at the fence or they're at a dog park and they come across each other, we have to quarantine those animals if it breaks the skin as it sits. They're asking us, because it's dog on dog, if the circumstances are right, say both dogs are vaccinated, neither party or really want to pursue any issue, citations or anything like that. They're asking some of these circumstances that we not have to quarantine the animal, because every time we quarantine, we have to do a follow-up. So we have to go back out 10 days later, and if they don't have it, we have to pursue that. If they don't do it, we cite them. It's a misdemeanor for not having your animal cleared.
I think where it started, sir, was the previous director. That was her personal, she wanted to get that changed. That part of it. But there is a national standard, the rabies compendium is a national standard, and they're the ones that established the 10-day holding for quarantine of animals. And so there's a national standard that you can compare, and then there's state standards, other communities, and I'm sure it would involve city legal too to decide how
And
to advise and update.
To add in, we've actually, when I first started, that's how we did it. We did any dog bite, whether it was an animal or on animal or whatever. Well, it was changed for about 3 or 4 years. They changed it to what they're asking, where we only quarantined animal on human, regardless of the circumstances. And then it got changed back by one of the last directors.
Was there a problem with having it that way when we had that ordinance?
We didn't see it. We didn't run into any issues. I don't know why we changed it back.
Okay, any other questions? Well, Dan, thank you very much. Thanks for your time and efforts and stuff up there. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Yep. We'll move on to agenda item number 3 is a Human Relations Advisory Board update. Representatives from the Human Relations Advisory Board will discuss the board's goals and projects, as well as council's policies and expectations.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Shamar Brown. I'm here representing the Human Relations Advisory Committee. I'll make some introductions after an explanation. Picking up where I left off last year, some of you may remember that I busted my neck, so I had that little thing going. Subsequently, I now have a busted jaw, so I'm going to ask you for your patience because my speech is embarrassing and annoying. It's very annoying, so I'm going to have Laura help me a little bit here today. Laura Judkins is our city liaison, and then I'd like to recognize Council Member Lurick. She is the council liaison. With me here today, we have Terry Brooks and Virginia Kelly, also members. So I would like to start with the award that we give out annually, the Human and Civil Rights Award that we present at the Martin Luther King celebration. This year, as other years, we had a very difficult time choosing a recipient because everyone is deserving. And Virginia, like she does every year, God love her, says, well, can't we have 2? Well, can't we? And we go through this every single year. And so after some discussion, I called for a motion to honor an individual and an organization. So from here on out, that's what the committee is going to do. We're going to be honoring an individual and an organization. And this year, the individual is Jason Bird, and I'll have Laura read about that. And then the organization was Portland Valley Interfaith Fellowship. And I think everybody's pretty familiar with the work that they do, and they're doing some great things within the community. I'd also like to thank Cable One, Maury Lee. We have no budget, and he has stepped forward with Cable One, and he sponsors the award and provides the financial means for us to present a beautiful award as opposed to, here's your certificate, type thing. And so I'd like to recognize that. Unfortunately, this year, I custom ordered them because I wanted them to really reflect the personality of the individual and the organization, so they were not available at that time. So I just gave them both one of my old high school trophies. and they still have them because I don't get them back or anything.
So that's a great way to get rid
I'm
of
not
those
supposed to,
trophies.
yeah, it's like Jamar's getting rid of her junk, right? Repurpose, right? And so then I went to one of the Portland Valley Interfaith Fellowships meetings to present them with their actual award, and then I had Mr. Bird come to one of our meetings to talk about his work and presented him with the award at that point in time. And I'm going to have Laura read for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Jason Bird has used his career to be a voice for individuals who cannot adequately express their own needs. Mr. Bird works with individuals who have intellectual and/or developmental disabilities, not only in our city of Pocatello, but across the state of Idaho and sometimes even other states like Washington and Oregon. Mr. Bird began his career advocating for individuals who have intellectual and/or developmental disabilities, who also committed some type of crime and who were involved in the judicial system. Mr. Bird developed a treatment program for these individuals and has set the standard for our organization and for our continued success with treatment. During his tenure as clinical director of Pocatello, Mr. Bird educated individuals with intellectual and/or developmental disabilities about boundaries, how to express emotions safely, and how to be safe in the community. For many of the individuals, Mr. Bird has been the sole advocate and stable person in their lives. Mr. Bird now uses his talent to help individuals with disabilities across the state. He is involved in creating a dynamic treatment system that assesses needs and offers a way to advocate for the needs of the individuals that we support. He is consistently looking for the best ways to provide care and to give the adequate support where it is needed. Through his continued work with his population, Mr. Bird has been able to educate law enforcement, probation officers, judges, targeted service coordinators, behavior specialists, qualified intellectual disabilities professionals, clinicians, and many other community partners about the needs of this population in order to provide the absolute best care possible. Mr. Bird acts with his heart and engages in each interaction with the community and with clients with dignity and love in his heart for the people and his community. Mr. Bird may not be vocal about the change that he is making for Pocatello and Idaho at large, but he is certainly having a pronounced positive effect in his circle of influence. Mr. Bird is a true humanitarian.
Thank you. There's no way you would have wanted me to read that. I'll tell you that right now. And this is actually my wedding funeral device, my other monstrosity. Forget it. So we do still, at our committee meetings, have people come in to educate us. Jason was one of them. The one that we recently had, Monday's meeting, it used to be NAMI locally, and they are now the Idaho Network for Mental Wellness. Not mental illness, but mental wellness. And they spoke, gave us a really good presentation on the work that they are doing here in the community. They have support groups, they have educational speakers, and I think that they're just doing a tremendous job along with a lot of the other organizations here. And I did want to bring that up just because of the work, that our award recipient has done.
And they have a picnic on the 19th, I think it is, in Caldwell Park that
Right.
they've invited everybody to. So if anybody has a we're going to be in Boise.
Yeah, we'll be in Boise.
But if anyone's here, the 19th in Caldwell Park, I believe at 5.
I have that written down in my notes.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that would be a good thing to send out. So I will do that. So picking up where we left, literally picking up where we left off last year, I was leaving the building with Gloria Mayer and we were kind of having a discussion out there, and it was after this study session, and a couple walked in. And they walked in and they were kind of looking around, so I knew they didn't know, where they were. So I asked if I could help them. And they said they were road tripping from California, and they were driving through. Pocatello was the first stop. They had heard that Idaho is a great place to relocate to from California. And so they were driving through Pocatello, and then they were going to continue on and visit some other cities. And so they were asking us some questions about Pocatello. So of course, Gloria and I jumped right in to do the whole dog and pony show. And we're talking about, all the perks in Pocatello and the various organizations that we have. And the gentleman said, well, we heard that you have issues, with racism. And I said, I understand that. I said, in the 1970s, the Aryan nations were very present, and they were in the media a lot, and Idaho did establish a pretty bad reputation with having neo-Nazis and some of this racism going on. And then I went on to explain the progress that we have made since then. Not just racism, but with our non-discrimination ordinance, and of course, Gloria jumped right in on that one. And so we talked about that. We talked about a lot of different issues. We talked about employment and some of these other things. And we wrote down names for them, places that they could contact, the Chamber of Commerce. We went through the whole thing. Real estate agents, we were trying to hook them up with all these people. Took them in her office, I introduced them, did the whole thing. And then I had talked about, speaking of the Aryan nations, coincidentally, a person that I grew up with is the one who purchased that property up north and donated it to North Idaho College. So after he made that purchase, he donated it. And then I just read coincidentally yesterday that that property is now going up for sale again. But what they are going to do with that endowment is they are going to create a human rights awareness program. And they are going to name it after Greg Carr, who is the one that purchased that in the first place. And so we went through that whole thing. And then as the conversation went on, it dawned on me that I was giving him the wrong answers. He wasn't interested in moving to a community that was inclusive. He was looking to move into a community that was not. And so for about 45 minutes, I told him all the reasons why he should not move to Pocatello. And I hope he and his wife and their family found their place, and I hope they're really happy. But it made me start thinking about what more I could do, what more our committee could do to educate the community and the state and other states as to the fact that I think we've made tremendous progress as a community when it comes to being inclusive. And I have to ask myself, what is my civic responsibility? I don't know if I actually did my civic responsibility that day or not, but that's how it played out. So anyway, and so then we just kind of quietly exited, and anyway. So that's kind of where I am going forward, is what more can we do? Not only as a committee, but as a city council. We have a lot of great organizations, and they are constantly, just like with this picnic going on, and then up at the university, they have World Refugee Day, and that's going to be a big event. We have Pride coming up, and that's going to be, a large event. And so I think that we need to have not just our committee, but, to see, I know you guys are very, very, very busy, but, to have representation from the city, whether it be our committee, another committee, city council members, whoever it is. We generally have pretty good attendance from Portland Valley Interfaith Fellowship members and groups such as that. And so that's kind of what I wanted to throw out today, is, what more we could do.
And I would
To dissuade people from moving here.
You did a great job selling the community and then moving them out.
So I apologize to the real estate agents out there.
Jamar, I just wanted to add to that. one of the really good discussions that we've had recently, and I mean, not just once, it's been ongoing too, just to build on what you're saying, is also to have the committee really be a resource, sort of a clearinghouse for information, because we've learned that a lot of people in the community who need help on different issues don't know where to go to get it. And that this committee can be a real good resource in just helping, steer people in the right direction and get them the help that they need.
And that's basically what we do. We don't do pro bono legal work, which we've been asked to do. That's not what we do. Most of the time when we get a complaint or a concern, we simply connect that person with somebody who can actually assist them or where they need to go. A lot of times it's not something that would actually involve the city. We've had things like with the school district. And so, we've redirected them, to that. And so that's what we do a lot of, is just kind of get people the help that they need, the counseling that they need, the advice that they need. Some have had to go to the Idaho Commission of Human Rights. There's been one that we did send there, and there actually is the case pending. But, once we've done our job, then it kind of moves on to somebody else.
Absolutely. Any ideas, council? You
Or
kind of put the
questions,
council on the spot here,
Sure.
so.
I love what you're doing, and I think it's great that you did not, you showed them that this is not a place for them. I think we could just put like big banners up that says no racist or allowed. But I think, what if we consider, I mean, this is probably something for later, we could talk it out later. Have like a mini conference or like a mini lecture series that we can do that's open to community, that talks about inclusivity, and having inclusivity training through various, maybe parts of the city, even individual groups that could take it, particularly school district.
Yeah, because there are a lot of organizations we could call upon.
Right.
Well, and the police department as well.
Right, absolutely.
Because they do their diversity training and they do all of that. So they would be somebody that, and they have in the past. Chief Marchand has been involved in some of these things in the past. And so that's something that we could play on. And then there are the Too Great for Hates and the All Under One Roof. There are all those organizations who kind of have, their level of expertise and their skill set. And if we could bring that skill set.
There are, as you said, these other groups, and a lot of them are doing those kind of conferences.
Okay.
So having that, and I think that's, a great idea.
Connecting it.
But having the committee, help promote those things and be a part of it and get, the community aware of them and get them involved with that is a good thing too.
University would be a good resource too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have things up there all the time.
Yeah.
So there's some ideas, and then we'll talk in a couple, well, I guess it might be a month that we end up talking about this work session, and we'll see if there's anything else that the council can think about the committee doing.
And we're constantly brainstorming too, trying to figure. And that's why we bring other organizations in. We have guest speakers. This past year we had 11. There was only one meeting that we did not, and then I did the TED Talk because the person who was actually couldn't make it, the speaker, but she did have a TED Talk, so we played the TED Talk.
Nice.
And that was, in fact, she's a fascinating person. That's somebody that we could definitely bring in.
Sure.
Is that Billy?
With this was Stephanie Taylor Silva. She is a former inmate, and we talked a lot about recidivism in the criminal justice system and kind of the stigma that's attached and the difficulties they face, because they do when they get come back into the community, and some of the things that we can do to help them.
Absolutely.
So in closing, I will read this. I came upon this and I loved it. It was kind of in relation to a Pride event, but let me read this to you. We believe in championing all beauty, living with courage, and standing fearlessly together to celebrate our differences. We will never stop building a community where diversity is expected, self-expression is honored, all are welcome, and you are included. Belong to something beautiful. So thank you.
Nice.
And thank you for giving me this opportunity to serve.
Thank you, and good luck next year, not coming with
I
a
know.
thing.
I can't wait to see what happens.
That's right. Thank you, Jamar. We'll move on to agenda item number 4 is a Japanese Sister City Subcommittee update. Representatives from the Japanese Sister City Subcommittee will discuss the subcommittee's goals and projects as well as council's policies and expectations.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The Sister City program, Japan. Currently, we have delegates leaving at the end of the month to head over to Wamizawa, Sister City.
Who are you?
I'm sorry, I'm Doug Woolley. I am the current chair of the Sister City Japan subcommittee. And we currently have our delegates leaving at the end of June. And they'll go over to Iwamizawa and visit with them over there and have an experience with the people of Iwamizawa. And then July 28th, we have the Iwamizawa delegates coming here to experience Pocatello, Idaho. And how the Sister City works basically is what we are is, I don't know if you are all familiar with how the program works, but we are a organization that provides youth delegations to a sister city or a city that, and we've been doing this for about 35 years now here in Pocatello. It's been 35. And every 5 years we do an adult delegation, and that's coming up next year. And the committee meets every month, and we discuss the needs of the program, mostly dealing with our delegation and picking the delegation and setting up agendas and fundraising, and then planning the agenda for the delegates that are coming. Matter of fact, we just had our committee meeting yesterday, on Tuesday, and that was the pretty much the dominant discussion was trying to set up the upcoming events for the delegates coming this way. We have, I think, we have 11 people coming from Japan, Iwamizawa, Japan, and we have to set up host families, and the delegates each get a host family, and then they experience the American lifestyle within the host family's home, and then we also provide the activities during the day, so the host family doesn't have to always be there for the Japanese kids that come over. And we usually take them to Ross Park, and then take them for tours of local businesses, and give them an experience. There is a Yellowstone excursion that we take them up to Yellowstone, and then we bring them here, and they get to see City Hall and see how Pocatello works, and we take them to the schools and those kind of things, so they get a feel for American lifestyle. And our primary purpose and goal for the Sister City Japan is friendship. That's what we promote. We're the friendship arm of the Sister City program here in Pocatello. And some of our goals are they're the same pretty much every year. Occasionally we'll have some diversity, but our main goal is fundraising to try and get as much as we can together, so we can keep the program running for these delegates. And then once we pick the delegates, then we also pick a chaperone, and that chaperone is in charge of all the fundraising with the parents of the delegates that are chosen on a committee that is the fundraising committee. And she's also in charge and picks the travel agendas, and typically they're really kind of the go-to for the delegation going over to Iwaimizawa, Japan. And this year, Kelly Mon is our delegate chaperone, and we have currently 8 kids going over, and we did have 11, but because of various reasons, we had 3 drop out on us, mostly because of financial. They didn't get the money they needed to be able to put it together and get over there. And so we typically need about $25,000 to get the kids there and back. And once we get the kids there, then they stay in host families in Japan, and then fly them back. And most of it's in travel that our expenses are for the delegation. We do pay the chaperones ticket over there and back, and they earn it because they do a lot of fundraising for these kids. And I don't know if you've seen in Cal Ranch we have they do a lot. Cal Ranch has been really great. We can do gun raffles and which is very, very odd to the people in Japan. They're very surprised that we fund our program with a gun raffle because they don't allow guns over there. And some of us keep saying if we only get the liquor store to participate, then we can fund it with guns and liquor. But one of our
Like a hunting
biggest
camp right there.
Yeah. Sign me up. And so we are a functioning board that is, I think we have 13 people currently on it, and very actively involved. And we typically, some of our goals this coming year is we'd like to come up with an additional $10,000, just simply because of the expenses involved with bringing these kids over and really putting on programs. Most of the monies that we receive from fundraising go towards our delegation going over, and the delegation coming this way it's a little sparse, because and having been there, I went in 2016 as the delegate chaperone, and I can tell you they do put a lot more effort into showing us a good time than we do. Not that that's what it's all about. It's really more about the host family experience and them experiencing America and everything like that. But we would like a little more money in the accounts, and so that's one of our goals, is to continue building our fundraising arm, and hopefully we're able to establish a little better program and improve the program for the kids coming over. Because we really can't do anything about the kids going there other than getting them there and getting them prepared to be able to speak a little Japanese and everything. And we do that on Wednesday nights. They typically have Japanese culture and language classes, and they learn how to say their names and who they are and what they do, and then they present that to the Japanese at a particular time when they go over there. There's a formal event where they can get up and give their speech, and then we teach them about the money and how everything works over there. So, and then when they get there, they can experience it. And it really is a life-changing experience for these young people. Everyone, for the most part, that has gone say that it's a life-changing experience. I would put this youth program up against any youth program out there. I would. I've seen it in action. I've been to Japan with the kids. I've experienced the cultural differences between us, and it opens the mind of these kids and gives them an awesome, wonderful experience that changes their lives for the rest of their lives. And my kids have gone. One of them has gone. Two of them have gone. Sorry. And it does open their eyes, and it matures them, and they see what's going on. And then they have to be out in the community fundraising, and so they get involved with the community. And they're not necessarily going to camps that are isolated and they're having fun at these camps. This is something that teaches diplomacy and gets kids out of their comfort zone if you think that's important, which as part of this program, I would say it is important, so they can understand, how their community works and have communication with the different businesses and programs within the Pocatello area. And we work closely with a lot of businesses who provide either donations or they'll give us perks. They'll give us little things that we can put in raffles, and everybody has something that they can always give to help us with, because they have a raffle every year. And On Semiconductor has been fantastic. We've had great support from On, and again, Cal Ranch, and some of these other businesses, smaller businesses that have been supportive of the program. And most of the time, like Pizza Pie Cafe usually gives us, free lunch for the kids, for the delegates that are here, that come here. And just a fantastic program to pull the community together and have these youth involved. Is there any questions? Yeah.
When the delegates come here, do they go through ISU? Do you take them up there at all?
We do. That's usually on the agenda. It's usually a half-day whole tour of ISU. And in fact, we've had one delegate that I know of that came back and went to school here.
Good.
And then I think she finished up in Rexburg, but she did go here for a while. Yeah. And it's a great opportunity to take them up to ISU, because it's that's something different that we have here that they don't have. So.
Any other
Thank you
questions?
for your hard work on organizing this, because I think this is a great youth program.
Yeah. You bet. Thank you.
Question? Other questions?
No, but I just had a comment. So we just had Jamar in here saying, what could we do to get more awareness in the community, or what could that committee do? I wonder if it would be a great opportunity for people in the community to meet the delegates when they're here. I know I've had the opportunity because I've been involved with this committee, but it is so fun to see how much they love Pocatello and how much people welcome them. And I think that would be a great example to put out there. So I don't know, we maybe have missed our window this year on planning, but maybe in the future, if those committees, I don't know, it was just a thought that I had, maybe they could work together. And
I think that'd be a great partnership.
yeah. Well, like I'm thinking, the mayor has a barbecue for them when they come, and not that we'd invite the whole
Just say, wow.
town to your, to your barbecue.
You're gonna have to
But-
get a bigger
yeah. Well, right. But, we have the farewell ice cream party for them also,
do,
and I wonder
yeah.
if we could get some additional sponsors or something, if it was in conjunction with that other committee, and get more people. I don't know. It was just a thought
Other
that I
committee,
had.
what do you?
The human
Relations.
Oh, relations.
committee that was here. I think you came in when they were
Oh, yeah.
in
Yeah,
the
I was
middle
here.
of their,
Mhm.
yeah. So anyway, that was just a thought I had since she just barely asked that. I wonder if that would be something that, I know we still have some committee members in the back, so that's why I'm mentioning it now. For that other. Anyway, it was just
Okay.
a thought that I had.
Mr. Mayor,
That's good, yes.
I had the opportunity to go with a delegation once,
Okay.
and I can still remember some of the Japanese words. Yamaha, Toyota, and so on.
Okay, we're not going to let Council President Johnston meet our delegates coming here.
I do remember Deloma gozaimasu because they say it all the time, and I did pick up some small little sayings. What I don't remember them now, but when you get over there and get immersed in the culture, you'd be surprised how Americanized they really are, but at the same time how different they are. So, I mean, I could sit here for an hour and show you a huge slideshow of experiences that have happened, and it is a great program.
Those 3 children that are not able to go, is it too late if we were able to find some finances for them?
It's probably too late for that because the tickets have been purchased and as a group, and they can't add to that group. But I think there were some other issues, not just financial, but
Because I hate to see that happen. Because
Yeah.
it is a life-changing experience.
it is.
My son, who went as a delegate, he teaches his children Japanese
Yeah.
because he wants them to be multicultural. And he went on a mission there after that experience, and it was life-changing.
Yeah, I hear that all the time. From me personally, it changed my life. It educated me that I don't want to spend 14 hours on an airplane ever again. So,
I am with you on that.
layover in Hawaii, I'm not doing it. But as far as cultural aspects and getting to know the people and seeing that people are genuinely good people wherever you go, and loving and caring and the crying when you leave, it's just been a great program. I've been at about 8 years now.
That's neat. Thank you.
We appreciate your work and your efforts. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will move on to agenda item number 5 is the Hawthorne Quinn project update. Art Del Rosa, senior engineer, will give an update on the Hawthorne Quinn project, which will include information regarding property appraisals of owners on right-of-ways and permanent easement acquisitions.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm very happy to be here. We have a group. My name is Art De Rosa, engineer in the engineering department. Maggie Clark and Johnston Hill will introduce them in a minute. For this item, if I could go back a little bit in history, I was assigned this project, the Hawthorne Quinn project, and this fiscal year, for this project, we are in the right-of-way acquisition phase. And my first impression is, I've done it a few times. I can take care of that myself. Then, very quickly, I learned a couple of things. Number one, federal regulation is very rigorous, and it has changed since I was dealing with it a few months ago. And we have presented to the council in November the permission to hire a consultant, Right-of-Way Specialist, Inc., that could help us guide us through this process. And the city has been very involved, especially in the area of determining where the right-of-way is. Not only do we go and check the location where it needs to be, we physically go out and mark the location on the ground. That way, the area that we are assessing is indeed accurate. With that, I'm going to turn the time to Mr. Johnston Hill of Right-of-Way Specialist, Inc.
Mayor, Council, do you want a brief explanation of what I'm going to do? I'll walk you through it fairly quickly. It's a federal aid project. Even though it's a federal aid project, Idaho and about half the states in the Union operate for right-of-way acquisition under the state rule. And I may get into that, I may not. But the properties all have to be appraised. In Idaho, it's by a certified general appraiser. That was done by Brent Thompson. He's out of Idaho Falls. He's a seasoned right-of-way appraiser. Right-of-way appraisal, it's really a niche. There are a lot of different regulations, different things you look at than a normal appraiser. And Brent's good. He's ITD's go-to guy in Eastern Idaho. So he did the appraisals. Then the appraisals get reviewed. And the review is more or less a technical review to make sure the process was done correctly, check math, that sort of thing. One thing a review appraiser has to step back from is you can't substitute your judgment for the appraisers. It's an opinion of value, and you don't get deep in the weeds on that. I mean, there are certainly things that you have discussions with them about if you don't understand them, or if you profoundly disagree, and maybe you can come to an understanding. But they're reviewed, and then they come to you guys to see if you'll authorize those payments. And my understanding is if you so decide, you'll do that in July. Once the amounts are approved, I send out acquisition packets. First, I get an authorization from the city. It is a document that the feds require, just saying, John, offer them that much. And it's generally, well, it's, in my experience, always the amount of the reviewed appraisal. So then I mail out the packets, the acquisition packets, certified mail, to the address that the assessor has. Because like even on this project, some of these are rentals and it's not for them. They have the packet. I generally give them a week to reply after I get the card back saying that they've received it. And then I try to make contact with them, especially if I have phone numbers and that. First thing I do is I emphasize to them that I'm not the decision maker. I'm negotiating it. Nothing's final till you folks approve it. I go over the project with them. I'll take a step back. First, I go, included in the packet is a advice of rights, and that's by state law, and it's about 13 bullet points of their rights under this eminent domain proceeding. Also in that packet is an ITD brochure that's a little more consumer or property owner friendly. It's easier to understand. Then I have the right-of-way contract, and then the legal documents like the deed or a permanent easement or a temporary easement. All those documents have been approved or will be approved. I don't think the permanent easement, we're still working on that because it's an overhead electrical power thing that we got to work on that. But they'll all be approved by him. I can't practice law. On the contracts, I can fill in blanks, and some of them, like there is I don't know what in this contract. I think it's clause 13, where I could add some things such as they'll move the sidewalk, they'll widen the sidewalk to 6 feet in front of your property, something like that, that's been negotiated and been approved. Let's see here. Then, once the documents are turned in, I turn them back to the city. And at that point, I'm done, unless, issues come up later, meaning I don't handle title issues. What can happen is just say, somebody has a $100,000 property, they got a $50,000 mortgage, and the acquisition's $20,000. The bank is probably their lender is gonna probably want some of that. I don't get involved in that at all. That's between the city and the title company and the property owner. I meet with them as often as they want. I will come in and meet with you folks. If there's some that are just kind of like, okay, that was easy. Yeah, they deserve another $1,000. I probably wouldn't want to drive in from Boise, but I'll be glad to come in, even on those, if you so desire, to explain the reasoning behind if the offer changed. And that's about all. So, questions?
Are homeowners aware that is the appraised price, or do they get the feeling that we're coming in trying to lowball them and they're going to start arguing up, or what is that letter to them?
They get the appraisal. They get a copy of the
Okay,
appraisal.
they have an appraisal.
Yeah,
and
that's
everything.
key. Yes, they do get a copy.
Okay. I mean, it's not a secret to any homeowner on Hawthorne that we've been talking about this for years, and in fact, many of them have argued with this why it hasn't already happened, and so it shouldn't be a surprise to them. I'm just curious when you get the one that says, "Oh my," well, you had one here that was like 0.01 acres was appraised for 500, is worth 500,000 because you need my spot.
And that's, where I try to educate them and tell them that it's not, it's what that property is worth to the market. It's not what it's worth to the city or the taxpayers to buy it. It's what it's worth to the market. So they're buying 1 square foot. The market, if it were the federal rule, they wouldn't get anything, because federal rule is you do a before appraisal and an after appraisal. The state rule is you pay them for what you take, and then if there's any damage or any benefit, they can offset. Nothing can offset the actual take, the improvements in the land you're taking. That I don't want to get into, because we don't do the federal rule in Idaho.
Okay. Other questions, council?
I have a question for Art. When I look at the right-of-way required, why does parcel 1 require 1/4 of an acre and the rest of these are less than a 10?
I'm trying to remember. It goes from. Oh, I remember. I'm trying to picture in my mind which one is parcel 1. That's the one in the city limit at that intersection, northwest corner. Thank you. Yeah.
It's a Robinson property.
Took me a little time to remember. The reason why, actually, that question is asked a lot. This project, it is to widen the road and also to establish the footprint for the traffic signals. When that happens, there's implications to the drainage. And in order to take care of the drainage, on parcel 1, there is additional to take care of the drainage issue. And that's the reason why it's a little bit larger. It was picked at that site because all the other corners are developed, whereas parcel 1, it is still an open field. And we feel that it will have less impact to the overall project and to the city, and that's why we picked that site.
Makes sense. Any other questions?
How far down Hawthorne going, basically southwest, are we going to have to acquire properties?
We're not going very far. We're only acquiring as much as it is needed. We're not doing any more. In fact, I have several discussions with the designer on how come it is certain places the way it is. To make a long story short, we are going 1, 2, 3, 4 properties down on the east side on Hawthorne, and on the west side, we are only touching 3 properties frontage.
Thank you.
Is the plan to widen Hawthorne Road all the way to Highway 30?
At this point, no, Mr. Mayor. There are a lot of things that we want to do, but from the fundings available, we are only addressing this intersection.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Any other questions, council? Sounds good. Well, I guess we'll see this in July. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll move on to agenda item number 6 is the fire apparatus disposal process. Travis Smith, Assistant Fire Chief, will be present to discuss the proposed disposal process for 3 1994 Pierce fire apparatus. The apparatus have reached the end of their duty life for the Pocatello Fire Department. However, there remains some functional life that would serve an agency with lower call volumes and lighter duty cycles.
Mayor, Council, Travis Smith, Pocatello Fire Department Assistant Chief of Operations. Thank you very much for having me here today. I came today, as you read, to discuss what to do and how to do our disposal of 3 fire apparatus Type 1 pumpers, 1993 generations that have some functional life left in them, probably not as much functional life that we would want to keep them around, but they are good, solid fire trucks. And I explained to somebody here recently, if they have 100 hours of life left in them, that's going to be burned out in probably 3 months in Pocatello, but it may take 10 years in Aramo, Idaho. So that's what I talk about in functional life. So we have a proposal to how to dispose of these trucks to try and gain the best benefit to the city, yet, in a financial means, but yet also in a more intangible means of getting them to cooperators that could help us in the event of a large fire like the Charlotte fire. We'd have a piece of equipment in that community that would be a mutual aid partner that would reciprocate that favor of a lesser expensive fire truck and come help us out. So in that, we've devised a plan or a thing that passed legal's muster and the legal department's muster, and has leveraged some of those benefits that I'm talking about. So our proposal would be to put these Dash fire trucks. Their model is a Dash, so that's what I talked to them as. Is the 1993 fire trucks. We'd put them out to a sealed bid auction. The fire trucks have a value somewhere between about $15,000 and $23,000. These are custom built fire trucks, so you never, it's not like buying a GMC SLT. They're really different, so finding the exact configuration is tough. An immaculate truck's $23,000. One that has a lot more miles on it's about $15,000 as you look at the market out there. We had some informal bids done on these fire trucks through people that specialize in this, and then just looked around at the internet what they were selling for. So that's how we came up with that number. And then at that point we said, well, $15,000 then would be a good starting bid on a fire truck. And so that would probably get us what we need out of it as a city. It would be the low value on it, and it may go up from there. But in order to help with those other means that I spoke of, we thought if we could give a credit, a handicap option to local fire departments that are already mutual aid partners, then that would help them bid higher, I guess you could say, on a fire truck, and that we would start extending that discount, or we'd lessen that discount or that benefit as you got further away or you had less impact on helping us. And so how we've leveraged this, and it's in the package, is, and I give some examples there. If you're part of the RFFA, or it's called the Reciprocal Firefighting Agreement that is managed by INL, means that we're mutual aid parties by signature, then we'd give you a $10,000 credit towards these fire trucks. So essentially, if they bid, $5,000, they'd hit the minimum bid for that fire truck. Does that make sense? Are you tracking with me?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then we kind of slipped that down slope, I guess you could say. If you were Income Fire Department and you're in the RFFA, they've came and helped us on fires. It's all stuff we can measure. It's very tangible. It's not subjective at all. Then that's the type of partnerships that we'd be looking for to give that bigger benefit to. If you were a partner, say, and I use the example of Aberdeen Fire District, who is not in the RFA, is not a mutual aid partner with us, is not in Bannock County, they would get a $7,500 or $7,000 benefit. They are a mutual aid partner with one of our mutual aid partners, so I think we would see them over here on a fire if we had that, and we've had that incidents happen before. And so I think that it just kind of de-escalates. If you were Gooding Fire Protection District, just an example, you're not in any mutual aid agreement, we're probably not going to see much help from you. But we did see help on the Charlotte fire from far abroad in the state, and so giving them a little bit of ability, we gave them a $4,000 discount or add-on to whatever their bid is. And then if you were in North Central Illinois, for example, you just buy it for whatever your bid was. And we think that's a fair distribution. The numbers could be argued and discussed. They get guys right in that departments in that ballpark where we're trying to get the best out of those fire trucks. These fire trucks will have some ladders on them. That's about all they'll have on them. Other than that, they're stripped down. They're just a bumper with a pump and a tank of fuel, however full it is when they go out the door. And so that's kind of the proposal we have, and that's what we're here for today. We'll bring later in July the actual surplusing of the equipment, but we want to make you aware of what mechanism we would propose to do this under.
Mr. Mayor, thinking very specifically of the north area here.
Yes.
They're not actually a fire department yet. Can they still bid?
Oh, absolutely, we're not going to prevent that. And you bring up an interesting question, and I think maybe I'll step too far forward, but I apologize. I had some conversations with the president of the North Atlantic County Fire District yesterday, and they are interested in the fire trucks, and we talked about some of the resources available, and they are interested in entering into the RFFA. They just can't join it for now. It would be my suggestion that we honor that and somehow in contract say that you will join the RFA. There's no cost to them, it's only a benefit. So I think we could extend that same discount, if you will, to the fire trucks to the North Atlantic County Fire District. But I think it would be best to make we've been in this process for a while of establishing this and have them just bid like everybody else for fairness. But then again, that's up to you as a council. They're not my fire trucks. I'll do whatever you guys want with them.
So they would come in at the 7?
Yeah, if that's what you guys would like to do, they would actually come in with the, if they would sign into a mutual aid agreement, which we will be in reality with the North Atlantic County Fire District, then I think we could leverage the $10,000 benefit to them. Okay. That would be up to the council's direction.
Well, it seems to me like they would be one that would definitely be involved in any fires in Pocatello if we had any. I mean, if we're looking at not necessarily a financial contribution for their thing, but for an apparatus, but an actual benefit to the city itself, it makes sense to me that.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is at this point. They've depended on the city of Chubbuck. They've crossed them out, said they're not going to do that. They have to set up a new fire department, and
yes.
I mean, if they're going to put a fire station in close to our area, then it makes sense that that we did some kind of a thing for them.
So a light bulb just went off. The language that I used was fire department district bidders that are participant agencies to the Southeast Idaho Reciprocal Firefighter Agreement or are in Bannock County. Mutual aid agencies shall receive the 10,000 bid credit in addition to their sealed bid. So I think we cover them pretty easily that way. Light bulb was not on right there. So
I mean, clearly, I'm just going to point out one area. Clearly, if they're going to put a fire station up Pocatello Creek Road, that's going to help City of Pocatello a lot more than any other agency that is in Bannock County, quite frankly. It's going to help Pocatello more than Chubbuck would be able to help Pocatello right now.
Craft Road, great example there.
So, I mean, I think we need to at least consider some of that stuff.
Question. So you were talking earlier about the range is 15,000 to, what did you say, 23? So where would you rank our engines on that? Like, they seem in great condition to me, but they may have miles. So are they on the higher end?
I think $20,000 is a really fair price for those engines. And talking to the agency, Fire Tech used Fire Tech used apparatus sales, $20,000 is a pretty fair price for those. The ones that were 23 had a bigger tank, a bigger pump, a different engine pack, and stuff like that. So I think $20,000 is a really reasonable price for our vehicles.
So as follow up to that, what when we have sent stuff out to a sealed bid before, do we get like a lot of bidders, or is it usually only the people in our vicinity? And the thing I'm asking is, if we've got something that's worth 20 and we're potentially letting it go for 5, I have a little bit of a hard time with that. But is somebody going to up their? I mean, what? Do you know what I'm saying?
Councilwoman, we have never done this before. I couldn't speak to that. We've never done a sealed bid like this. Generally, we'll advertise in the trade magazines that we have this going on for a couple weeks. We'll certainly put it out to those agencies that have already expressed interest, that are really, really wanting those. And yeah, it is a tough pill to swallow at $5,000 for a fire truck, but we get this intangible benefit on the back end we have to weigh in there.
So where do we come up with the 10 and the 7 and the 4? Like,
arbitrarily, to be honest with you, we could do that wherever you guys wanted to.
I totally understand the thought process on giving a bit of a break, because there's some reciprocal benefit there, and obviously we want to, help out our neighbors and stuff. But I don't know if we want to
give them away.
Just totally give it away for
Chief Gates,
rock bottom.
Pocatello Fire. We tried to sell a fire truck quite a while ago. It got to Fish Creek Summit and the engine blew up. We were selling it to somebody back in Arkansas. We got about the $20,000 for that from them. We ended up having to give them their money back, tow it back, and we ended up giving that truck to American Falls. So I think, there's the benefits of that proximity. The number, we can put whatever number you want in there. I think that most of the departments we're talking about are generally not well funded. When you talk about Aramo, we've had several that have expressed interest, but they're not well funded departments. They're very small departments, and so this is just, I guess, throwing them a bone because of the proximity. They're close to us, and we see that they're likely going to be partners, mutual aid partners, and that's a benefit to us, as Travis says, is intangible.
How does that one that we had to end up taking back compare to these? Are these in better condition than that one? Did it have more miles, or is it?
So that was a Quint aerial apparatus, which would be on the market. Buying it new would be, almost 40% more than one of these trucks. So if you scaled that back to a Type 1 pumper, these would be worth significantly less than that ladder truck. And they had pretty much similar miles. Their work cycle, their maintenance life was all very identical. So that $20,000 vehicle was not even, almost not even comparable because it was an aerial.
Okay.
From that perspective.
Having become very concerned about this situation since our last discussion, I understand there are about 5,000 property owners that will be in this district that is already formed, and there will be an election to try and increase the levy to above the 3% that is currently allowed. And it seems to me that this fire district is going to be lacking funds until 2020, when that election will take place or will take effect.
Well, I think they're going to do a special election in July for that. And then if that fails, probably put it back on in November. But in 2020, at the end of 2020 is when they'll actually see any money from that increase if the voters do the increase.
Okay, so if money is short for these people, would it be, I'm just talking out loud, but is there a possibility of say, a lease purchase so that they would be able to use their money to build their buildings and to acquire the other equipment that is needed? It's going to take them at least wouldn't it be about $10,000 to equip a fireman with his firefighter with uniform and everything?
When you talk about that, the firefighters, all their PPE plus all the equipment they're going to have on the fire truck, it's going to cost money, quite a bit.
So if they have 15 firefighters and they're volunteers, that's a lot of money. And I'm just looking at what we can do so that the city of Pocatello benefits the most.
Can I clarify or ask a question about one point? You said to raise the levy over the 3%. I thought it was to go to the max.
They will raise the limit to the max. That's what's in front of their the citizens in that district is to go to the max. And, and they're a long ways from it right now, and so there's a good chance that it won't pass. If
those people don't vote for it, they have no fire protection, basically, and their insurance rates are going to go so high, I can't visualize them not supporting it.
I've talked to several landowners, and they are willing to go to the max to do this.
Yeah.
They see the need and the danger if they don't.
And I have also, but talking is one thing, and actually marking the box is a whole other other thing. I'm full support of this, but I'm marking no because.
This is my tax.
And they get to do that.
Because I have a garden hose.
That's right, because I have a garden hose.
Yeah, I think you're going in the right direction, Travis. I like the research you've done, and I encourage you to move forward with this.
Thank you. We would just ask if they want to change those arbitrary numbers. They seemed fair, I don't know. That was the day it seemed fair. Today, maybe it doesn't seem fair. If you all just give us some directions on what those numbers would be, we'd put them in that's how we'll surplus it and present it as a proposal. But
it's hard to swallow. You spend $750,000 on a fire truck and it's worth $5.
I know, we just
25 years later, they saved a lot of property.
Yeah.
Well, I just think in terms of my own situation with the Charlotte fire, the Ingham Fire Department pulled up my driveway and saved my house.
Yeah.
And so we need these people And so,
Absolutely.
Mr.
I
Mayor,
just am having a struggle giving away $30,000.
Yeah.
That's what it amounts to. But that's where these engines are.
but it's
you
an
also gotta
additional
look at what we
insurance
get back.
policy for us to have additional backup if they're close by.
I think that it depends on where they are. I mean, if it's
Yeah.
a North Bannock County Fire District, then they will respond to us. If it's an Aramo Fire District, they may or they may not, depending on the situation. And so
It's still volunteers.
it's still volunteers. And so, but I think the closer you are to Pocatello and I'm looking at this as not giving $30,000 away. If it were to go to a North Bannock County Fire District, I'm looking at it saving us $100,000 because they're there if we need it.
How
And
soon do you want to do this?
Well, the longer the truck's set out of service, the more the sills and the valves and everything dries out. So we'd like them to get them to their happy new owner as soon as possible. Unfortunately, we can't make things happen until July, so we have some time to think about it.
why don't we just put it to August and see if they pass their levy in July?
Where are the trucks stored now?
Outside at Station 2. One of them's still in service as a reserve because we have one that's set for a couple of months and having some body work, and it's leaking everywhere. So yeah, no guarantees on that. So August doesn't bother me at all either. I was trying to get this done since February.
In this process, though, there's no guarantee that North Bannock County would get them, is there? I mean, how does that?
Well, you're either going to get what you want out of the fire trucks, or they're going to get them. That's the way I see it. I mean, because if somebody comes in and bids, nobody's going to bid $26,000 on these fire trucks. They're not worth it. And then they have to transport it. That would just be, that wouldn't be good sense. They could go somewhere else and get that much cheaper. So everybody's going to be bidding in that $15,000 to $23,000 range. And if you're given that $10,000, say North Bannock County District comes in and says we got $10,000 to bid. Well, they just made a $20,000 bid. And now they're gambling that they didn't get to the $23,000 bid, so they probably should have bid $13,000, and they would be really comfortable, bidding that amount. It's a gamble, it really is. But the city then gets what they're worth, at that point if somebody from Ohio buys them, and that's up to them.
But there again, I can't emphasize enough. I mean, yeah, I get there's $10,000 on the table. I get that. But when we have a fire at Pocatello Creek Road and we've depleted our resources in Pocatello, and we don't have a North Bannock County Fire District that can be there to help us, it's going to cost us a heck of a lot more than $10,000. That I'm looking at, okay, yeah, I understand the idea to get $5,000, but is it worth $5,000 if it's going to cost us $10,000 tomorrow?
What's the difference in response rate between your department and a volunteer department?
As far as time on
response
scene?
speed.
The time on
There's no
scene?
comparison.
Yeah, there's not a comparison.
Well, I guess that's part of what has been concerned when you're talking about a volunteer department. How valuable will they be, or will Pocatello be on the scene of a fire at Pocatello Creek first?
Oh,
We should be, but we need that backup.
Right.
The other thing I think we need to do is be good citizens, and we have a fire training facility there at Station 2, and I think we need to help get these people trained so that they will be valuable as backup for our people.
Travis, you had something.
Couple things. Try not to lose track of that, Councilman. So let's rewind about 6, 7, 8 years before Chubbuck really was staffed fully, and they had a guy. We used them all the time. They don't reciprocate. They never ask for us, but we used them on the Monarch fire. We used them on all kinds of fires we call Chubbuck for, even when they were volunteers. We don't use them in that initial phase, but what the mayor was tracking with, and I think just for consideration, is sometimes we run out of resources, and that's when we really, really need them. We might not need them right now in the first 10 minutes because we're a lot faster. But we need them to cover the rest of our city. We need them to come in on a bigger fire, and I think that's valuable. Just kind of on a segue there, I reached out to Roy Allen. I've offered him the services of fire services training. I've told him where we can, we will help train their firefighters. We can get them out there and use the kind of the Big Brother technique. When our staffing allows for it, we'll get somebody out there to help train their firefighters for driving, captainship, and all that stuff. So he already has a resource in us. So.
Good.
Does this
The other
also-
thing they're going to need is it called a pumper? The one that holds the water?
The tender, they're working on
The
it.
tender. Yeah, and
But we don't have one of those, and
No.
we're not interested in getting, well, we're interested in getting one, but we're not interested in getting one so we can get it to them. Well, that was something that They helped purchase the one in Chubbuck, and they probably should work with Chubbuck on that to try to figure that one out.
I agree.
But the other thing to consider in terms of the overall cost that we're talking about here is, does this help us put off building the next new fire station too? There's another potential savings there if we can delay that by so many years.
Absolutely.
Good observation, Linda.
Right.
That really is.
And we talked about that. So.
I heard mention of maybe they would put a station up Pocatello Creek. I've heard maybe
That'd be
they
the
put it near
second one.
Freeway. Where, do we know? Do they have any idea?
I have talked with
can we
Roy
dictate?
about that, and they're in the process right now of negotiating one on the corner of Tyhee and Yellowstone, and because that would be fast and they could get that up and going very quickly. And then their next one would be they're looking for property up Pocatello Creek Road around the KOA up to Parks, somewhere between KOA and Parks Road.
Well, if they're struggling financially, this can be a long time before they get a second one.
Well, if their bond passes, they'll be able to get the second one within a couple, 2 or 3 years. If they have the equipment. If they don't have the equipment, then they'll have the one station, and then they'll be trying to buy equipment from someone. So this isn't a fix tomorrow. This is a Band-Aid to help them get to tomorrow. Would be my argument on that. And I do think that there at Tyhee and Hawthorne, where they're looking at putting something right now, once that interchange is done, it's a pretty quick jaunt to...
It's within a mile of Siphon Road.
To Pocatello Creek. It cuts the timing down quite a bit. And so I think there's still some benefit to us. Obviously not as much benefit as if it's up Pocatello Creek Road, but from what I understand at Pocatello Creek Road, there's a business owner that's willing to donate them a bay of their shop so that they can put a fire truck in and work out of that until they get this other going. So,
Mayor and Council, to also maybe address a little bit of the concern of whether they would actually win the bid or could win the bid, I think we could probably put a mileage or a distance credit in there, because quite honestly, the RFFA covers people all the way up and down the east side of the state. And that means that technically we could sell this truck to somebody in Rigby, Bear Lake, because they're all members of the RFFA. So I think what we could do is do a little bit of tweaking on this particular recommendation, come back with a mileage attribute that's kind of evaluating if you're closer proximity to us, and we give you more of a credit. If you're further proximity, we'll give you a lesser credit to try and capture.
yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
So my suggestion, Council, would be work on that and bring it to us in August after they've had an opportunity to have an election to see what the voters have said. And
That we can charge them more.
It might help. Well, I'm not suggesting you charge them more. They won't have the money for another 2 years. But it gives them an opportunity, and then we'll know a little bit more about what the voters think. I mean, part of the concern, I think, is the voters going, they got a truck, no big deal, we're good, and I don't think that's the desire of the council. I think the council's desire is to help, but also help protect the city as much as possible as well. So.
It benefits us to have them stand up for fire service.
Yeah.
Well, by then, if it does pass, they should have some kind of a plan together.
Absolutely.
We'll have a little more to hold our hat on to give away $30,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if they don't stand it up, then
I like
we don't
everything,
need a
but
fire truck.
giving away $30,000.
Exactly.
Well, we could, if you're saying we could change that,
need to.
instead of
It's
10,
too
it could
much.
be 7, or, you know what I mean? It could be
all of these
adjusted.
numbers could be adjusted.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I would suggest bring it to us in August for a decision and go from there. And we'll have a better idea.
Good plan.
Okay.
All right, Council?
Yep.
Okay.
Sounds
Thank you.
great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll move to agenda. Do we need a break, Council, or can we continue on?
Let's go on.
Okay, we'll move to agenda item number 7, Senior Building Ad Hoc Committee update. Representatives from the Senior Building Ad Hoc Committee will be present to give an update regarding utilization of the former Street Department building at 1080 South First Avenue for the Senior Center. The committee is seeking council's guidance regarding future use of the building.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Phil Jocelyn. I'm representing the Senior Building Ad Hoc Committee. I volunteered to make this presentation because nobody else would.
Pretty impressive.
They know how to twist arms, it sounds like.
But you have lots of support behind you.
Several members of our committee are here. Jan Flandro, the president of NKA, is here. Pam Landon, I believe she's treasurer of the Senior Activity Center. Margene Wofford, secretary of the board for the Senior Activity Center. And then also Lee Dilley, a local architect, is here. Lee's was back there. There he is, yes. Lee's here too, and he has done some preliminary work for us. So Margene Wofford recently made a presentation to the excuse me. I'm new to this particular software, so I appreciate your patience. Margene Wofford recently made a presentation to the council on the state of the current Senior Activity Center building on 6th Street. One rough estimate I heard for the cost of the repairs and changes that are needed is about $100,000. Before the council goes ahead with those expenses, the committee wants to let the council know that building is really appreciated, but it's also really become too small to meet all of the needs of Pocatello's senior community. I'll get it down. There are more seniors now than ever in our country's history, and that will continue as approximately 10,000 baby boomers will be turning 65 every day for the next 15 years. It's been called a silver tsunami. Many of those boomers will either be staying in Pocatello or coming here because of the great quality of life and the affordability of housing that we have. It's also expected that Northgate and the LDS Temple will be attracting more people to our area as well. And finally, Pocatello is a magnet for snowbirds who come here to enjoy our relatively mild weather and, again, our affordable cost of living. There are already about 9,600 seniors living in Pocatello. And here's a little information about them. The median annual income for a senior here is just under $38,000. But 42% of senior households here earn less than $30,000 per year. About a third of the seniors are living alone, and the majority of them are women. Those living alone are more likely to suffer from depression. What organizations are on the ad hoc committee, and what are they currently doing for seniors? New Knowledge Adventures is a lifelong learning organization with between 450 and 550 members each semester. NKA has been collaborating with Idaho State University for years to make numerous academic classes and classes involving motion and fitness available to Pocatello seniors at a very affordable cost. Until recently, ISU was providing space in what was the continuing education building. That's the one located across the parking lot from City Hall here. That was provided at little or no cost to NKA. Now, rent for classrooms and activity classes is the largest expense category that NKA has. The Snake River New Horizons Band provides an opportunity for seniors to get together and enjoy their passion for music. They practice twice a week and perform in concert throughout the region. The Senior Activity Center mission is to provide seniors with socialization opportunities while supporting nutritional, physical, and cognitive activities for them through a number of programs, activities, and classes, along with some special events. The United Seniors Project is an umbrella group that's currently working with AARP, the American Association of Retired Persons, the Bonneville Neighborhood Association, New Knowledge Adventures, and the Snake River New Horizons Band, along with some interested community members, with the goal of securing, renovating, and sustaining a facility for those groups and others to provide their programs and activities. Each of these organizations, as well as others that aren't represented on the ad hoc committee, have the goal of providing low-cost opportunities for lifelong learning and staying active that might otherwise be out of reach for many of the seniors living here. The current activity center simply doesn't have the space to host all of the programs that are already being offered to the current senior population, let alone other programs and activities that could be available to the growing number of seniors. What is needed is a single facility, one that is large enough excuse me, to meet not just the current needs of the organizations I just identified, but a building that has the potential to host other groups and institutions that could make their programs available if there was adequate space available. And again, the number of Pocatello citizens who could use that facility will likely be increasing. Specifically, what kind of spaces are needed? First, classrooms, several of them in different sizes, rooms for the band to practice and store their instruments, office space for the administration of the various programs, rooms for activities like cards and games, as well as rooms where motion and fitness classes like dancing, yoga, and so on could be held, a larger space with a stage that could be used for performances and guest speaker presentations, as well as other special events, and a commercial kitchen and dining area. Oh, and plenty of parking that's very close. We're seniors. Certainly, with scheduling, the rooms and spaces could be used by numerous organizations. For example, a classroom where an NKA class is offered in the morning, it could have a senior activities class in that same space in the afternoon. A guest speaker could appear in the large room in the morning, and a band concert could be held in that room in the evening, and so on. With a long list of different types of rooms and spaces needed, I'm sure you can imagine the challenge of finding a large enough building with nearby parking available. The United Seniors Project has already been looking for a facility that meets the needs of our seniors and has toured several buildings. Each of the potential locations comes with its own set of advantages and disadvantages. USP identified Bonneville School as a facility that has many of the needed types of room and spaces available, and there is also space available for remodeling to meet the other needs. USP also toured the former Farmers Insurance Building on South 5th. This large facility and its plentiful parking could be a great senior center for seniors. There are probably other buildings that could be candidates as well. Considerations for each building include the purchase price, remodeling costs, the expense of ongoing maintenance, and so on. One very interesting location that was recently brought to the attention of the organizations represented on the ad hoc committee is the building on South First that was the former offices and shop for the street department. Most of this building has been used for street department vehicles. However, the substantial amount of open space that shop provides offers the potential for being repurposed into a number of different rooms and spaces. I don't know if I can make this. I don't know if I can enlarge this. This is a proposed flow plan. Is there a way to?
That's the biggest it's going to get.
Anyway, this is a rough floor plan that Lee has prepared. I do have handouts of this that I can offer the council members if you'd like that. I can do that in a moment. Lee has put together, Lee's been working with the United Seniors Project and has prepared a proposed floor plan showing how the nearly 14,000 square feet on the ground level of the street building could be modified to provide the space and types of spaces that the ad hoc organizations would need. The plan includes a lobby, a large room with a stage and seating for over 200 people, a kitchen, and spacious room for dining or receptions, and several other meeting spaces and offices are also contemplated. The plan also includes an enlarged second level built over a portion of the shop area for more rooms and activities and classes. An elevator is also included. This building has the huge advantage of already being owned by the city, and it certainly might fit into the Terry First project. The second page of that handout that I gave you is a floor plan that Lee had prepared for the Bonneville School building, showing how the various classrooms, gym, and existing stage area and so on could be used, along with the inclusion of changes made to accommodate a kitchen and dining area. In summary, Pocatello needs active, engaged, and informed senior citizens, and the seniors need the city to work with the organizations that provide those services and opportunities. There is a very real need for a larger building to be the base for organization serving Pocatello seniors. That street building on South First could be just the building we need. So I'll be happy to try to answer any questions you might have, although with several members of the committee here, some of them might be better able to answer than me. So.
May I ask Phil a question?
Absolutely.
Phil, money always seems to be a great challenge in our community. This is an ambitious project. Are the resources really there so that we can make this what it is intended to be?
Great question. The huge advantage this particular building has is that it's already owned by the city. So the acquisition cost drops off the table. When the United Seniors Project was working to put together a bid for the Bonneville School back in January, I think the bid was in mid-February. In less than 30 days, in less than a month, over $50,000 in pledges had been raised. And that was with relatively limited promotion of what is there. It's going to be a project, certainly, for the city and the community in order to take a facility, whether it's Bonneville School or the street department or some other location. It's going to take, I think, one estimate. Well, the figures on the street department that Lee put together, about $1.8 million. The estimate to remodel and work on the Bonneville School over a period of several phases, I think, is around $1.1 million.
Plus the acquisition cost.
I think that includes acquisition, doesn't it? Yeah, I think that one includes it. So, there are grants, there are businesses in the community that probably could step forward and assist in putting this together. There are some grants, but the majority of the grants don't necessarily they're not interested in providing bricks and mortar. They're more interested in supporting programs. Now, there might be some remodeling costs that those grants would cover for a particular program. But as far as somebody that provides funding to help acquire a building, that isn't there.
Thank you.
Phil, I have a question for you. You mentioned parking a number of times in there, and I wholeheartedly agree that parking would be important. The street department doesn't have a lot of, that building, to me, does not have a lot of parking around it. I mean, I guess you got the road, but the parking lot itself is not very big.
I think there was some consideration of using the lot across the street that the street department has.
The sanitation department parking as well?
I think that's what that was, okay. Yes. So there's potential for using that as well.
Okay.
There's pretty good parking on the north side of that building, between the building and the water, the well there.
I'm gonna ask Tom, because Tom, could you come up here real quick? The parking lot question, how many cars fit on that parking lot there? If anybody knows in this city, it should be you. You lived there for years.
Tom Kirkman, Deputy Public Works Director. There's approximately 35 to 40 stalls there. There's pretty good parking on the north side of the facility.
Okay, about 35. And then around the front of the building along the side, I mean, if
There is some on-street parking as well. Yes.
I know that if they could use the parking in the sanitation lot, that would be extremely beneficial. Although if the city sells that building, that parking also goes away.
So we have lots, some storage lots that were across the street to the west. One of those lots that we currently house the glass bunker for our glass recycling is the only lot that the city owns of those lots across there. So,
but that could be made into a parking lot.
There is, yep. And that would be across the road to the south.
Is the rest of it ISU ownership?
Correct. It's kind of a mix. There's some.
Yeah. That's a tough question. I don't think anybody can really answer that one because it's ISU. It's
Pocatello National Guard, some defunct agencies, so it's a tough one.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's probably 35 stalls, 35 to 40.
35 there, and then that parking lot across the street, you could put
probably another 25 to 30 cars in that one.
Okay.
If it was laid out properly. Yeah. It was laid out a little different because of the nature of the street department. We had to make paths through the big trucks. So I think if it was restriped, you could probably utilize it a little bit better.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. The questions, council?
I'm anxious to hear some comments from Rick. He's been monitoring this better than the rest of us. Anything?
Well, one of the things that Phil didn't cover, Gary Salazar with ISU Continuing Education Workforce Training, that group is heavily involved with New Knowledge Adventures. They kind of provide the back office support for New Knowledge Adventures. And Gary also indicated that some of these remodeling costs that might be necessary, they could possibly get done through their construction trades group at ISU. They're looking for projects for those kids to actually get out and do stuff. Okay. So in response to your question about the cost of doing these projects, it's possible that some of this could be offset through ISU and just instead of building stuff and tearing it down, they could build stuff and make it work permanently here. So that may help.
I like that.
But there's no definitive plan yet because we don't have a facility to plan around yet. You know, in our discussions with this group, one of the things we've talked about is if we can get a commitment for a building, then we can put a business plan together, a construction plan together, do some fundraising, and make this happen. And I'm like Phil. I think with 9,600 seniors in our community.
That's just Pocatello.
That's just not Pocatello. That's off our own resolution or proclamation we issued here a month ago from the census stats. I think this can happen. Sharon raised $57,000 in pledges. The Senior Activity Center has $150,000 in their savings account. New Knowledge Adventures has some money. We did some rough numbering the other day. Immediately, if we had to spend every dime, we could probably come up with about $300,000. And I think that is a very reasonable number to start off and do what has to be necessary to move into a facility. Now, eventually, it's going to take more money to build that facility up to the level that we want it to be, but you can't run before you can walk. You know, we've got to start with something and do better because the facility we have currently doesn't matter if we go spend $100,000 on it, it still won't do what the seniors in this community need.
Can I ask a question? So one of the concerns, I mean, you mentioned this as a positive that we already own that building, but in order to recoup some of our cost for our new building, you know, it would be nice for us to be able to sell it. So we wouldn't be able to do that with this project. So my question is the senior activity center that they're currently in, can we sell that building? I know it's not maybe worth the same, but are there restrictions on us selling that?
I think, if I remember right, I believe there's restrictions on that because of the grant funding that was given to us for that. And you also have the Bonneville Neighborhood Association that is
there.
a part of that, and I think it would take some research. We could task our legal department to research that a little bit more if there's a timeline that restriction falls off or not. But I do know that part of the grant that happened years and years ago was that it had to remain in the city's name, and we could not sell it, and or we would have to reimburse that dollar amount back.
Okay. And the other part of that, the Bonneville Neighborhood Association, would they go into this new building with you?
We've included space for them in the event that they're interested in doing so.
Okay.
Right now, they have I think a dedicated room and a small kitchen that's in the current activity center.
Mm-hmm.
And whether we could provide that in a new building, question mark, but they would certainly be welcome. And it's a little bit out of their neighborhood, so I don't know if they'd want to move out of the neighborhood. But we've surely made. We talked with Elfrida. We've made sure that they know that we want to include them in anything that comes up where they have the opportunity to participate if they want.
Phil, I have a question, and this is just me thinking here. Has there been, we see the inside, has there been any desire or any thought to the facade of the facility out there and an expense on that? I bring that up because I hear often from our seniors that our senior activity center is not a desirable place. You look at it from the outside, it's not desirable. It's not desirable from the inside. And so many people won't go, and my concern would be we spend a lot of money, the city donates this, and now I look at, I don't want to offend Tom over there, but it's not the prettiest building I've seen in the city of Pocatello, and it's a shop, and you look at it on the outside, and that's what it is. That's one question I have, and then the other question is location, location, location. You always hear that, location, location, location. Are we sending the wrong message if we were to move forward with this to our seniors that says, look, we're going to put you down here in a warehouse next to the tracks on the warehouse, and it's on the south end of town. I mean, I'm sure you're not going to get a Chick-fil-A being built across the street from there because of location, location, location. So is this a good location or is it not a good location? What message are we sending to our seniors with this? If you come up here and introduce yourself to the people, you probably can.
And then maybe I'll turn it over to the city of Twin Falls as a senior center. And theirs is located in a commercial district similar to where this one would be. And theirs is a pretty successful program.
Okay.
That's one example. There are probably others, but that's one that comes to mind immediately. And then concerning the outside facade, I remember years ago when this particular building itself was a grocery store and an Osco drug.
And I look at it, it's still a grocery store to me. We call it a city hall, but I see a grocery store still.
I think most of us have kind of tried to forget that with the different changes that were made to the outside aesthetics. And I'm sure that something could be done for that building too. The location isn't the very best. I acknowledge that. A neighborhood location probably good, perhaps a commercial location. But at the same time, the building has a lot of potential, and if we put it there, it could increase relationships with ISU, and I could see where people that the urban transit system could be used to get people there and make it convenient for them and that. So
you also mentioned the Terry First project earlier, and I think if that project, gets going, and this could be a real anchor in revitalizing that area, so maybe it changes the location.
I recognize I recognize that we are working hard to make our downtown area, and this is part of our downtown area. revitalize it and make this more desirable for everybody to walk up and down. On the west side of the tracks, we've done an incredible job. On the east side of the tracks, we've done a fairly good job as we've worked our way down, but there's still a lot of work to do. My concern is messaging. I mean, what is the message that we're sending, and is it the right message? I don't really want to stand in the way, but I don't want to set up a building and spend all this money and do all this stuff, and then in 10 years have the poor mayor that's sitting there in 10 years listen to, that's a horrible place, you need to find another place. This is you put us down here, and
Warehouse.
I mean, I got to ask the question.
Yeah, sure.
So,
May I?
Yes,
Anita
please.
Valladolid, Director of the Senior Activity Center. That is a very valid question, Mayor. And I think at this point, our seniors have stated that the existing senior center is run down, but mainly they were concerned about, yes, the facade, and it's not modern looking. However, like Mr. Jocelyn stated, there is so much potential in this upcoming building, First Avenue. It is, I guess they were in awe when they toured it, the leaders, the senior leaders and our board of directors, because of the space. The space has so much potential. And at this point, the seniors are not very concerned about the outside of First Avenue building because of the potential there. It's all an ADA requirement, so we won't have to modify any of the ADA, so we'll totally be in compliance with any HUD funding, any federal funding. So they're not, and as far as oldness, an older building, they realize it's older, but we're all older, and we can put some flowers up facade. We're really concerned about the space. The space is what's really the concern when you do a survey at the senior center, and we've talked to a lot of seniors. It's the space of the senior center and the deterioration of the senior center.
Anita, I cannot argue with that. I can't argue with anything you've said. The space is great space. It really, truly is. I don't wholeheartedly agree with what you've said, though, that the space is great and we can fit what we want to fit in there and we'll make it work and we feel good about where it is now. Do we feel good about where it is now because it's a different building? Or if I drive a car that's a 1985 car and I just bumped up to a 1990 car, I'm feeling pretty good about that. I got myself a new car. Mm-hmm. Are we just moving from one old car to another old car? Mm-hmm. Or are we, I mean, that's my concern, mm-hmm. honestly, is, mm-hmm. and I've told many people out there that same thing is, are we just putting something because we don't like where we are? And we have to do something with, something has to happen. I just want to make sure that's clear. Something has to happen. I'm not saying we should stay where we are. Something has to happen, but are we moving in the right direction? Are we moving kind of because we just don't like where we are?
I wish I had that answer. I don't know. I do know we do have to do something. We can't be picky either. I don't know the answer.
I think the point is we don't have a lot of options.
Yeah.
We've looked and are continuing to do kind of a survey of the community about where we could go and do something. Short of buying the bottom of school and tearing it down and building a new facility over there, which would be tens of millions of dollars, it's simply unaffordable. There just aren't many commercial spaces in this community that could be used.
And I agree, it might be a help with the revitalization of First Street there and stuff. It really truly puts people down there and takes them down there. So
I was surprised the first time I toured that building. It's right around the corner from West Side Players. It's less than a block away from that engineering building where we saw the demonstration the other day. Mm-hmm. There's more. It's a couple of blocks from the Museum of Clean. Penny Pink's place, the brewery's right down the street, a couple of blocks. it's an area that is being revitalized. And I'm surprised how much activity there is around that building.
Maybe if we move here, then the millennials will be jealous of the senior center now.
Yeah.
Then you'll get a presentation on a millennial center.
That's right.
It could spur the development of that.
It could help, there's no question.
It could help with that.
Yeah. Heidi, you had...
Yeah, well, Rick mentioned that the Bonneville school is not feasible. So I think we just need to be, well, I know, but I think we need to be realistic that if we don't have $500,000 to buy the Bonneville school, and neither does this organization, and do all the renovations to it, that's essentially what we would be doing here. I mean, if the whole purpose of us doing our fleet department was to realize some savings. And so if we don't sell this streets shop and the sanitation building and recoup that, we're basically paying that anyway. So if we didn't have $500,000 to pay on Bonneville School, we don't have, I mean, if we don't sell this building for $600,000, we're paying it one way or the other. So, I mean, realistically, we have to realize that that is affecting our budget. So I know you guys have done a lot of work on it, and these plans seem exciting. I'm just trying to be realistic about that. I mean, I'm just wondering, I know you mentioned where can you get a large enough building? I know it's not ideal, but do we have times at the rec center if what you're wanting is extra yoga classes or spaces to play cards that we could fit some things in around? I mean, I just feel like we need to explore some of those options on facilities we have, or maybe when it's after hours there or something, they could have some classes. I mean,
Still doesn't provide a nutrition center. We need a commercial kitchen that'll seat 100
well, but we
people.
have the existing, and we could do some fix-ups to it for a lot less than
But you need it all in one space, Heidi.
Well, why do you need it? I mean, I know that's ideal, but you don't have to have it all in one space.
In order to get seniors to use it, whatever we're talking about needs to be in one facility. So they can go from a breakfast to classes to educational opportunities, and then there's lunch. I mean, it needs, otherwise it simply won't
I understand
get
that would be
used.
ideal, but that is talking big dollars, which we have a lot of constraints on our budget. I just think we need to be realistic about that. I mean, it would be great if we just had unlimited money falling from the sky that we could do it, but we have a lot of other things coming in our budget that we have to be weighing that against. I mean, I'm not saying that we don't support trying to get something figured out and that we don't want the seniors to have a place to do these things, but that's big dollar amounts.
Excuse my verbiage, but is it Councilwoman?
Yes.
Yeah. Councilwoman Adamson, I believe that I understand what you're saying, but I think it's about longevity. And if we don't have it, if we're not dealing with it today or this year, we're going to eventually deal with that problem in the years to come. And we have this opportunity arising, and we are open to other suggestions. We have no idea what's in the vicinity of the city of Pocatello, but I just believe it's a question of longevity and stability. And if we don't answer it or deal with it as soon as possible, it'll eventually arise.
And I definitely understand that, and I'm not saying that we can just continue to do nothing, but I just don't think this is the fit. I think if we keep that building and we don't sell it, that's more property that's off of the tax rolls, which affects us into longevity also.
Sure,
If we don't
sure.
have taxes coming in on that,
Sure.
that affects us. I just don't think that we can realistically.
I think one thing to Rick's point that we have to think about, and I understand the concern, this is a big effect on our budget, but I think spreading out the services is going to make it much less used. I was thinking about the comparison, and bear with me, I'm not comparing seniors to homeless people, but I was like, when we're looking at a homeless shelter and the services that people in the shelter need to access, when the shelters, I mean, and this is any city, not here, but when the shelters are put too far away from all of those services, then the success rate of people getting out of the shelter and getting back on their feet is really low. And I was thinking that might be comparable, again, not comparing seniors to homeless people, but just in terms of using the facility and making it really work. If it's spread out all over the place, I don't know how effective that would be.
And that's really kind of the situation we're in now. Is, you know, NKA has classes at Liberty Hall and at the Travel Lodge. The New Horizons Band has got their practices and some of their performances in the basement of a church. We have the Senior Activity Center. And you think about different organizations that could step forward and provide services, ISU nursing, you know, health fairs and those types of things. Again, if there was a single center, that just offers a lot of synergy between all of those different organizations, and it would make it more of a destination for folks where they go and as Rick said, you know, you have a meal, you have a class, you visit with friends and coffee, and maybe have an activity that afternoon, or stay and go to a presentation or concert that evening. So a lot of potential there.
I mean, I don't know how the groups are working now, because you had a list up there and you've now taken it off the screen, but you had like 5 different senior groups, and this would definitely put people together. But I guess you could do that at any facility we found if it were there.
And we should look at all the options in terms of other buildings, but I think it really would work best if there's a building where all those things can be in one place. It just seems like it's not going to be optimal to have them spread out.
I think the feeling I'm getting from the council is we're all interested in making sure that we recognize that this is probably dated and probably not working the way it should here, and that we would like to see something or do something. The real question is when we purchased to Heidi's point, when we purchased the Western States Caterpillar building, the intent was to sell these 2 facilities, put them back on the tax rolls and help pay for that. And that's so she's kind of sticking on that path forward to put that back on the tax rolls and be able to help pay for that. But I also recognize, and I think the council's, from what I've heard, is saying we recognize we need something different. Is this the right location or is it not the right location? And so please, I'm going to say this for everybody on TV. I get nods from everybody in here, but Councilwoman Lyric was not comparing seniors to homeless people. She absolutely was not doing that. It was an analogy, and so I want to clear that up really quick. But I think we recognize that there is a need for something to happen, and this will definitely take some time for the council to discuss it and have an opportunity to talk about it. And it's a great floor plan. As I look at this, it looks like a good floor plan, and there's no question the facility is large enough to probably host all 5 groups all at once, singing and dancing and cooking and teaching and playing pool and pina colada or whatever that is. What is that? Pinochle.
Pina colada is a drink.
It's a drink. That's right. It is a drink.
You saw the secret plan if you saw the pina colada.
You might want a pina colada while you're doing all of that stuff. So anyway, I think that the council has something to discuss and to talk about, and I appreciate your diligence and Rick taking this on and being a part of this group, and I'm confident we'll see a path forward. This may be it. There may be another one that pops up that we're really interested in that works for everybody as well. So
I really like what Lee's done with the architecture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here. It looks awesome. Looks awesome.
Well, we appreciate your interest and your time and your expression of support. So thank you.
Some of us are more interested than others.
Thank you. Then we will move on to agenda item number 8 is a Port Neuf River Vision Implementation Plan update. City staff will give an update on the 2019 Port Neuf River Vision Implementation Plan and solicit council guidance on city-related action items related to the plan. I'm struggling here.
Good morning, Council. Hannah Sanger, Science and Environment Division Administrator and facilitator of the Portneuf River Vision Implementation Committee. Thank you for making time for this today. So I have a fantastic committee and I'm really proud of the work they've done over the past couple of years developing an implementation plan for the vision for our river. And so I'm going to start with a bunch of slides of a little bit of history and go pretty quickly and then move into the implementation plan and where we're going. Just to start off with, we started this visioning because we were trying to take action on the river and it really was a nightmare. We weren't able to do much. But if you have a vision and you don't do anything, we call that daydreaming. It's fun, but doesn't really accomplish much. So Pocatello today, we have a river that runs through town, but we don't talk about it a lot. When you pull up Pocatello on the Google, this is what you see. It's our classic Pocatello image. And if you keep scrolling down through Google Images, eventually you get some pictures of water that look like this, which you might recognize as not being from Pocatello at all.
I thought that was right outside your office down there.
You don't see, this comes up and sort of this eventually, and some of our issues with stormwater and water coming in from Marsh Creek that's pretty filled with a lot of sediment. You don't see this picture when you Google Pocatello. You have to Google Portneuf River to get to this shot of the gap from Edson Fichter. So with that in mind, we started the river vision, and we wanted to know, what does the community want? And our big guiding question, you've heard me read this a number of times, was how can we restore the Portneuf River in order to revitalize environmental, recreational, economic development opportunities while increasing community pride, connectivity, and quality of life. And we were looking from the gap to the reservation boundary, basically. So very Pocatello-centric along the Portneuf. And we heard again and again that residents, their top priorities were water quality and ecosystem health, recreation, and access. Cost is important, flood control is important, but these were the two items that just came up again and again, really quality of life and what people wanted to see and what they wanted to do. And they wanted a river that looked like they were in Idaho, and when you go to vacation in Idaho, a river that you see in those spots.
Is that previous picture right by Riverside Golf Course?
This one is actually Edson Fichter Nature Area.
It is.
From the Cheyenne Bridge.
Oh, beautiful.
It is beautiful, isn't it? It's a lovely shot. Ralph Mott took it. And it's one of my favorite shots. And out of the river vision, we came up with some images of what the Portneuf River could be. From Raymond Park, Center Street area, right by where votes would be down on the other side of Center Street, so you're looking south in this picture. Memorial Park, just getting some access there. There's not a lot of land. And then, let's see if I can get this to work. We also had some folks float the Portneuf. We might have sound, but it doesn't need sound. So this is taken by the Aberzuski Trail. And was taken after we removed debris last summer. And it is a picture I love to look at, or a video I love to look at, because I work in a windowless office, and this reminds me of why I live in Pocatello. And I think that's really what the vision is about, is why we live in Pocatello. What is it that draws us here? We have incredible hillsides, and a lot of people out on our hills using them hard. Every time I go to City Creek, there's more people up there. But when I talk to people about the Portneuf River, and I say, how many of you have done this in Pocatello? Rarely does somebody raise their hand. And this is, You could put in at the Craft Road Bridge, you can put in at Sacagawea Park, you can put in at the Gap. There's a lot out there. This is a kind of fun stretch through the trees, lots of big willows, and some calmer waters. This is a trickier stretch and is not where we're going to do our float this summer. We're going to do it upstream of Pocatello, where it'll be flat like this image right here. And we're just about to the end of this. And you can see on the left there, that's where we were doing some debris removal. There's some people cutting trees. So we had a huge crew working on the river last summer for a week. It was awesome. And which brings us to our implementation plan. So in the end of 2017, as taken from the River Vision Study, which in 2016 the council approved a resolution that said, directed staff to work on implementing the River Vision and form a committee to help us do that. And so this committee was created. It was a loose assortment of some citizens and a lot of agency staff and city staff, particularly from environmental, planning, and engineering. We developed the implementation plan, and the big things there are priority tasks and a funding matrix. And we looked at what we can do in 3 years, because at 3 years is a manageable chunk of time. If it's 5 years, I think I don't have to do it for a while, and I don't have to get started. So we wanted this to be a useful document to help us keep track, because what you're going to notice is there's a lot of projects. And hopefully you all got a copy of our latest draft. We're just about done, was emailed to you for the plan. We also wanted to develop signage, which includes a logo, and initial plans for a community float to get the community out on the river. Committee feels that moving forward, the best place for this committee is to be a subcommittee of the Portneuf Watershed Partnership. It includes representations from the city. It might have Fish and Game on it, DEQ, citizens, various agencies, which will ebb and flow for prioritization of work. But the efforts of this committee is a lot of partner coordination, making sure we're all on the same page, working on community engagement events, outreach strategy, and our upcoming task is a brochure about what we have accomplished recently and where we're going, along with an updated website. So a lot of coordinating events and figuring out how to get the word out. So the River Vision, when it was created, integrated a lot of plans. In this implementation plan, you can see how it fits with the city's comp plan. And the vision of this, I read it before, so I won't reread it, but lots of agencies from economic development to environmental to social services, planning, the whole gamut. We tried to engage. In our implementation plan, we include goals and objectives, and those come from the 2016 Vision Study. So the implementation plan, as it's written, we designed it to be updated every 5 years, and at that point, we'll look at these goals and objectives and see what needs to be changed based on changing community preferences, changing knowledge about our river. And I can look at them now and I can see that they need wordsmithing because they were written by committee, but 5 years is painful enough for going through those sorts of things. So what we focused on instead is what are our priority tasks and what have we accomplished and where are we going right now. And so everything listed in here is a priority task. We didn't prioritize 1, 2, 3. We said if we're going to list it, it's a priority, and we're going to let you know how long we think it's going to take us to do it. And that's to help us keep on track. What sort of resources we might need. So do we need city council leadership on it? Do we need community support? Is there enforcement tied to it? Does it involve a code change? Is it a big partnership? And does it require a lot of new money? And is this ongoing, like something we're just going to be doing every year? And we wanted to make sure that every task we have ties back to our goals and objectives. And so we went through that exercise as well and looked at who is going to be leading that effort. Does it come from the city? Is it Fish and Game? Is it the Portneuf Watershed Partnership? The committee became the Portneuf River Vision Action is the committee's name. We also highlighted on the right here is our accomplishments. And so what have we done in the last couple of years? And you can sort of, they're located on maps. And so I'm going to go through these, just a highlight of some of what I think are our greatest successes moving forward and what we're doing really well at. So there are branding, signage, and design elements. There's outreach and engagement tasks, planning tasks, and then critically, the project design, funding, and implementation.
Why does that funding always have to come up?
I know. It's the hard one. And you're going to hear me mention that a bunch. And that's why it's at the bottom. We'll get to it last. We're going to start with the fun and stuff we've done really well at, which is some branding, signage, and design elements. We're working on a new logo for this River Vision implementation. Our old logo had pictures of conifers, which we don't really have a lot of in Pocatello. And we wanted something that represents the city. And so on your implementation plan, you can see a draft of the logo. It looks like the gap. And we are planning on, you can see this image of the Portneuf River on the right that is related to stormwater permit requirements as well, is we want to make sure all of our river crossings are labeled. This is a standard across the country. When you go across a river, you should know it's a river. When I moved to Pocatello, I lived on West Center, and I walked across the river there, and I couldn't figure out what it was. I thought, okay, it doesn't smell like sewage. Maybe it's irrigation canal. I couldn't believe that it was a river. But so making sure that we are stating where the Portneuf River is. We have these on I-15 and Highway 30, but not in town. With our logo below it. And then this is a sign, Maggie Clark updated this, and so interpretive signage about some of the projects that are going on the river. So talking about our water quality monitoring, talking about what you might see along the river, talking about stormwater, drinking water, wastewater, beavers, whatever. We've also accomplished a lot of outreach and community engagement. So we have a float coming up on July 18th where the community can get in the river. We're really excited to test this out. Been learning a lot, figuring out a lot of processes related to access to the river, and we'll be testing that out beforehand to make sure that the official test will work. We do river cleanups. Terry First in 2018 really taught us the value of testing. You put not much money, a fair bit of staff time towards testing an idea, and it lets you run with it and learn from it before you start spending hard dollars. And so we're planning that with this float. It's really important for the stormwater permit for getting folks down to the river. We also created this implementation committee. The committee's been meeting regularly and developed this implementation plan, which was a lot of work, figuring out where we wanted to go and how to put together all of these pieces. Less picture pretty is all of the plans that we had to do, planning tasks. So this includes, strategy for funds acquisition. So I've been working closely with Rick Cheatham on thinking, where does the money go if you get money? How do you move it around, and what are the logistics and the MOUs you need to sign? We started working with the Army Corps on approvals for processes such as vegetation variances. The community float even required some Army Corps approvals, and just working through the process there. Centennial Park. Integrated planning, so making sure that our wastewater and stormwater and drinking water capital improvement projects are all working together in sync, and we can leverage those dollars as we think about what to do with our excess wastewater and how to best protect our drinking water. We've been supporting Old Town's master plan update because it's closely related with this river vision and tied in pretty pretty closely. And there's a lot of GIS mapping because we want to prioritize projects that we put on the ground, and so figuring out where those priority projects are. So ranking, say, you know, here are the largest landowners and here are the worst stream banks, and using GIS as a tool for that. So all of those planning exercises, and then we get into implementation. And we have been busy in the past year working on the Centennial Park design and funding underway, water trail design and funding. So we recently got about $20,000 from Idaho Parks and Rec and another grant source to put in at least 4 put-in takeouts for canoeing, kayaking, tubing, rafting along the Portneuf River. So the idea is we'll be testing out stuff this summer, and that will guide the implementation this fall and next year. Working with ITD and intern of theirs who's a PhD student at ISU on a wetland near the highway ponds, and so how can we run water under the railroad tracks over there, recreate the wetlands that have been lost. Probably the biggest bang for our buck in terms of restoration we can have in Pocatello, so that's super exciting. Maggie Clark applied for money to connect as part of Terry First, the First to Second Ave along Benton Street, and we got it. I think you might remember some conversations about that, and so that is moving forward, which is really exciting, and is a really critical piece of getting everybody to the river again, you know, connecting that ISU area over to Old Town and the Portneuf River. This is a little chunk of land, but it all adds up. We've got money to do restoration on Pocatello Creek, and so I'm working with Austin and engineering on that design, and implementation will be this summer. Cusick Creek, also working with the Forest Service. That should be this summer, maybe fall, maybe next spring, but underway, and as well as a watershed fence, so moving the municipal watershed fence up around Elk Meadows. So the Forest Service has begun that work, and there will be volunteer days for both that and Pocatello Creek later this summer. If you want to string barbed wire, come on down. We have 3.5 miles to string. So we're busy. These are a lot of projects. I mean, I hope, you know, it's not just the projects, but the planning and the outreach. This has been an amazing committee and effort from not just the city, but our partners who are all working on these efforts. And the vision is really helping us tie it together and figure out what to do next. And this implementation plan is helping guide us where we want to go.
Hannah, who owns the highway pond?
We do.
It's city-owned property?
It is city-owned. We acquired it from ITD for $1 or for free a few years ago.
Okay. So we really do have an interest in that.
We do. Yeah. Yes. So,
Thank you.
This is such a great plan. Part of this, we put together a funding matrix. ISU had a group of students in a grant writing class. I think Laura Blad was in that one, who helped put together some funding ideas for us for the River Vision. And so we've grabbed that and then added to it and created a matrix to help us see deadlines and such, because it's really easy for those to pass by. And so I really want to stop right there and just say, I have about 3 more slides, and they're really important ones, but I want to stop and say thank you for your support that got us here, because, you know, it really did take the council support for staff to devote the time we've had to get here. We have some big needs coming forward, but that was important with the River Vision, your support. So what do we need moving forward? We need additional champions. I have job responsibilities beyond the River Vision. I just had a stormwater permit land on my desk 2 days ago. And so there's additional tasks that they take a lot of time. And if you think about those list of projects, so we have developing and implementing a strategy for land and easement acquisition. Similar to this senior center issue, you know, we want the land or the property there when we need it. We know what we want. Eventually, the land we want will be built on or suddenly be inappropriate. And so figuring out how to acquire the land that's needed to implement this River Vision is important. It's not my skill set doing that, and I'm just asking everybody I can need a champion to figure that out and to push it forward. Soliciting funds, I can write grants. Not a full-time fundraiser. It's a big job to do a lot of fundraising. So soliciting funds, Valley Pride has stepped up a lot, but we do need more help. Lots of projects to manage, so working with engineering really closely on that. But there's a lot of, every time we apply for money, we have a project, and so all of this is work. And then integrating the River Vision with other priorities, as we want to think about, as we're doing, whether it's a water project or an airport project, which is far away from the river, so not a good example, but we'll say a street project, how does that tie in and making sure that we're just integrating those together. It's not that one is more important than the other always, but just making sure we're communicating. These are big needs, and if the River Vision is going to be successful, it's going to take additional resources here. And so that's really my big message is, we can do a lot, and we have great staff working on this in engineering and environmental and in planning, but we're going to reach our max of what we can achieve, and there's only so many hours in a day. So my request to you, continued support for implementing the River Vision as funds and resources permit, as outlined in our River Vision plan. So there's tasks that are dedicated to city staff to lead. Help recruit a volunteer, a champion. Ideally, a volunteer would be fantastic, but a champion who can push it forward. We're really lucky with the Greenway right now. There's a couple people on the Greenway board who just make the Greenway happen. They are its champion. But if that doesn't work, recognizing we're going to need money and full-time support from the city somehow to implement these, or they're just not going to happen. So that's the risk. So with that, and what's the benefit of it all? This is pictures from Caldwell. When we think about the transformation Caldwell's going on as they've been investing in their river that was buried as it ran through town, and they've been doing a lot of associated plaza development. If you haven't been to Caldwell recently, their old town looks similar to ours. The buildings are the same height. There's a lot of thrift stores down there, and I bet those thrift stores are going to be going away. And so thinking about bringing in economic development expertise with this River Vision, there's a lot of opportunities. It's not my skill set, but it's certainly Caldwell's a great example for us to look at in terms of scope and size of community. With that, I thank you for listening.
Good presentation.
That's good. Any questions for Hannah?
At the present time, what is our commitment resource-wise to this effort? I can't remember.
Oh, great question. So I am supposed to spend about 20% of my time on this. And then, as projects arise, as engineering and planning are able to help, they've been helping. So pretty minimal. That's one day a week. And I'm able to double dip with stormwater stuff that ties in, but it's not much. Obviously there's other resources that go into it elsewhere in the city.
So when we're thinking in terms of multi-millions of dollars to put this visioning all together, what do you really expect from the council as far as dollars?
I don't have an answer for you right now. I think that would be one thing to explore. I haven't thought about that other than a champion, and ideally a paid champion makes it sustainable. Somebody whose job is to make this happen. That's probably the most important thing, and dollars that can leverage grants long term. But I haven't given that thought, but we certainly could come up with some numbers and look at other communities of what they've done. Usually I've seen a lot of economic development people focusing on this, especially as it pertains to the downtown Obviously, the stream restoration projects, you can bring in a project manager who is doing stream restoration. And a lot of communities hire a stream restoration project manager, because that's really critical to what they want to do. But the downtown is not stream restoration. It is economic development. It's, there's benefit to the river, but the dollar benefit is really for economic development and quality of life.
I see like the merging of the Portneuf and Marsh Creek in that ugly brown water, and we've been seeing that for years, but I don't know what we're doing.
Oh, great question. So the city worked with NRCS last year and got an additional $250,000 for NRCS to spend on Marsh Creek doing some restoration projects. And when we'd worked with ISU previously, out of that to understand, why is Marsh Creek so brown? Out of that, we had some prioritization of areas that could be recreated as wetlands. They were wetlands historically, and they could trap lots of sediment. And so NRCS, which is federal agency, Natural Resource Conservation Services, has started talking to those landowners, and they're looking for, one of the questions came up with a landowner is maybe, hey, if we do the restoration project there, is there a water right, the city can buy that would help support this? So we're starting those conversations of trying to figure out how can we take the pieces of money from everywhere and put them together and deal with all of this complicated issue and solve this resource issue, make the landowner whole because they're giving up a great deal, and improve the local environment.
Well, we seem to be held responsible for much of that sedimentation when it comes here.
Yes.
And that is worrisome to me.
Yes, and it's really why I think the city should continue to invest upstream, and ultimately, when we get some numbers, crunch those numbers and realize what kind of economic or what kind of water quality benefit we're going to see in Pocatello by spending money up in Marsh Creek. It's a lot cheaper to spend money in Marsh Creek than at the wastewater treatment plant or with stormwater.
So I know there's been a lot of money spent upstream, and I believe there's a plan that they're coming up with right now that will help a lot with the sediment in Pocatello upstream, but it's a matter of getting it implemented and a matter of working with landowners and stuff like that upstream. Mm-hmm. So
yeah. And I think not just we should look at what the benefit is to doing that work, but also what the cost is to not doing it, because I think there's a huge cost.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point.
In the early part of your presentation, you had the Portneuf River Study Circle and all the little circles around it. Have all of those partners already been involved, or that's what you're hoping to be involved?
No, they have all been significantly involved. So all of those partners listed there were part of the Portneuf River Vision initial effort, a planning effort, and then they've continued to be involved, in varying degrees as we've moved forward. But they all have committed a lot of time and effort towards putting together the initial river vision and then this implementation plan.
Have they committed any dollars to make it happen? Like the county or the health trust or?
No. I'd say let me step back and move through,
Some haven't
they have partnered with us on various parts, but it's no dollars really. So when we did, Terry First, we had certain partners and they're going to do certain things. When we do a stream restoration project, DEQ's involved in helping us out, working with Fish and Game, and they're committing resources, but not on any sort of large scale from these entities. So lots of time.
Heidi?
Yeah, as I look at those entities. I noticed one that's missing is a Chamber of Commerce, and I'm just curious if we should
they
explore.
should be.
Well, I mean, I know you've gone to chamber
okay.
events and done your presentations, but I'm thinking maybe we need to explore having some more assistance from the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, economic opportunities, increasing community pride, connectivity, and quality of life, that is really what they're all about. So I would think that maybe we could look into
That would be great. We've had Bannock Development continuously involved, but less participation from the chamber. So,
But if we need more champions and more,
Let me address that real briefly. Hannah and I have been talking a lot about fundraising for this project. One of the potential partners we have in the fundraising is the Chamber's Foundation. Hannah's explored the Idaho Community Foundation for being the fiduciary that holds the funds, passes the money that's given us onto the city. They want 4.5%, as I remember, Hannah. And the chamber, they're having a meeting tomorrow. The foundation is to consider doing it for us at 2.5%, which would return a lot more of that money back to the actual project instead of being held for administrative stuff. So the chamber is aware and involved, but
who are the foundation members?
I don't know.
I've never heard.
They have an educational foundation, and Matt's concerned that as an educational foundation, this may not exactly fit into their mission, and they may have a problem with their foundation organization and the Attorney General's office maintaining their nonprofit status. So that's what it comes down to tomorrow.
Have we considered the United Way if we're looking at a foundation of some sort, and what would the United Way charge us? I don't know that they...
We also talked to...
Portneuf Soil Water
Yeah.
Conservation District, they're interested. They've said they would do it at cost. So just trying to figure out the logistics and the sustainability, so even if something works today, making sure that we don't want to change this in 5 years. I want an organization that where they're going to have the continued staff support to process it. And so that's what one of the things Rick and I have been looking at is making sure that not just the organization will be around, but the staffing to take the money in.
I haven't discussed another part of this with Hannah yet, but I had a meeting Tuesday, and we would like to launch this fundraising effort at your float.
Oh, awesome.
We have a fairly large, a decent commitment that we'd like to do a big check presentation and all that, and use that as matching funds toward moving on and trying to raise a couple $100,000 immediately, so Hannah can pay that bill that's going to come due in August, I believe it is. So we'll at least have that, and possibly give us some money. We can go ahead and launch that next phase of the engineering that's going to be necessary.
Good. Sounds good. All right, any other questions?
Questions? Direction to continue to move forward?
I don't see anybody saying stop.
Okay. I just
Go fast.
All right. Thank you.
Presentation too.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll move on to agenda item number 9, electronic timekeeping for payroll proposal. Human Resources and Information Technologies staff will present a proposal regarding electronic timekeeping options and standardization of payroll processing for the city of Pocatello.
Hello, everyone. Heather Buchanan, Human Resources Director. If you weren't on the council last time we went through this process, congratulations. We've pulled all the weeds out that were getting in our way of trying to explain what we were looking for. So Bert from IT and I have been working on this project. He's been doing the majority of the heavy lifting. However, he's not here today, so you have me. My apologies. So when we talk about electronic timekeeping, last time we kind of got stuck on all the processes. We want to talk about just the basic function of the system. So on an average year, we process 20,000 timesheets. So over the course of the year, that comes down to 788 on a standard payroll. In the summer, that bumps up to over 800. The actual cost of just printing timesheets is right around $1,000. That's the paper costs, the printing costs, and then we put in about $200 for departments that use paper to request time off.
And how many personnel are involved with this?
Each department has a person that processes payroll.
Okay.
For example, your big departments that have a lot of manual processing are going to be police and fire, and they spend days on this, not a couple hours. It's overall days. So potential numbers. Last time we talked about the American Payroll Association. They say that the average between miscalculations and human errors between 1% and 8%. I'm a little bit more conservative on what that actually looks like. I took that down to 0.025% for errors, and most of those I'm accounting to. Sometimes it's just hard to read a timesheet. My handwriting's horrible. Shauna just reads it well enough, and I'm 5 feet away from her desk that she can walk over and ask me. When you have employees that work remotely or they work different shifts or locations, it's a lot harder to figure out if that was a 5 or a 3 or an 8. So I'm saying of a $33 million payroll budget, we have 0.025% errors, which comes out to about $8,500 a year. I can't exactly track that for you, so that's why I went with really conservative. And then administrative staff. We will reduce the hours they spend on this task. We do not anticipate we will reduce staff. So what they're no longer spending on timekeeping, they can use on other projects, because we know no one's running with that department. So let's talk about what this actually costs. So setup, time clocks, and training comes out to the one-time cost of just under $63,000. Annual maintenance on that is $8,200 or $316 a payroll. So it's significantly less than last time we were before you. We've done some shifting on how many time clocks. We've done a lot of movements. The time clocks have been upgraded to different types. We can go to a card reader, we can do a thumbprint reader. We went with kind of the middle of the road, and we put 9 time clocks in this bid. We also took out the piece that drove the cost up last time of the time off system that we were going to buy for police and fire. If fire has their own system that tracks scheduling, police doesn't. If we want to add that at a later date, that would be a different cost, and we've rolled it out of the cost of the electronic timekeeping itself. So when we wanted to talk to you about what this actually costs, we're looking at $63,000 one-time money, and then the annual cost of $8,000. Which is a lot less than last time. I was like, it has to be under 10.
Remind us what it was last time.
I think it was like 12,000 annual, and we were at well over 100,000.
Yeah.
So common problems. This has just been reported by the staff who handles the timesheets themselves. Handwriting, incorrect coding. So whenever I take an admin day, I have to walk out and ask Shauna, what is the code for admin time? Or when I'm training, I need to know that code. You have to know those all, or have the little sheet of paper that you go look at. If you're on FMLA, you have to have FMLA plus like sick leave or vacation, depending on the type of leave you're utilizing. It's very convoluted. It's messy. It's kind of archaic. Late timesheets. A lot of times we process timesheets and people are paid, and we do that without signatures. So we're processing timesheets without the employee signing that is the accurate time. Okay. If there are mistakes made, we often do not catch them within the same time period, just because of accessibility to the employee. We handle payroll for the volunteer firefighters and paramedics for the county, because they run through our system. We maybe see them once a year. They have to get a hold of them through email, or they mail things back and forth. It's very outdated. So the new system, we brought in all the admins and we did a presentation. We had some departments in here and we showed them the product. It will do everything that the city needs. All of the stuff we got stuck in last time, the debates over how things were going to happen, that's process that we have to build as we implement the plan. That process will be defined by the core group that we have set up to implement the project, and then training, they will help train the rest of the staff. Last time we did a horrible job of conveying to council that process is outside of this project. If we go with this project, we clean up our payroll processes. Payroll does an amazing job processing as much as we have. They're not doing a bad job. I'm not saying they're doing a bad job. I'm just trying to update the system that we give them to do it. Methods of time entry, this was a big question. I'm a proponent of time clocks for a lot of your, you have at the pool, you have how many people come in and clock in. You can do it with a time clock with a scan card. You can do it with a time clock with a pin. You can do it from a mobile app from your phone. When you mobile app from your phone, you can set up something called fencing. So if we want to say you have to be within 10 feet of the water department or 20 feet of the water department to clock in, it will not let you click your time in unless you are within that fence. So the question came up, we have a lot of employees who work in parks that don't ever come into the office because they go right to the softball fields. They would have to be within that area to clock in. This is all processed, but this was a big question we had last time. The mobile app, from your computer, you would log in. I sit down on my computer every day. Most of City Hall will not need a time clock, neither will police. You sit down, you log in, you can click your time in. Administrative system entry, that will maintain, so if you have departments that still need to do some hand processing of timesheets, that option will remain available. And that is the gist of the whole project.
Is this system in use by other cities?
It is. So the company we're looking at is Central Square. They are a preferred provider of our payroll system. If Bert was here, he could give you a little bit more articulation on that. I can tell you that it would probably be a sole source, and it does fully integrate with our computer systems, including our public works system. So cost coding, time coding, project coding, that can all be done within the system.
I just wanted to say thank you for not letting it completely die and bringing it back. I think it's very important for us to move from the past into the present. The future is great also, but this is, doing paper and manual is not what we should be doing. So I think it's great that we're doing this. I love to see that you've gone through it a little bit more, and maybe it's going to be a little bit less than it was last time. So that's great news. And what else do we need? Do we need to do some budgeting amendments since we've already built, or what do we do?
We're interested in this project, because I know last time there was a lot of interest, but you couldn't even get the 3 people at the table to agree on what we needed to save you, and that was on us. So we fixed that problem. You notice there's only one opinion at the table right now. So the one-time monies, we can take it out of like capital contingency or excess reserves if we want to do it this fiscal year. If we want to add it to the list, we're happy to bring them in to do a presentation to council. I can tell you I have at ISU, I was part of the implementation team on their banner system. So I've rolled out training on this. I've developed policy. This is not something that is new or unknown to me. You have a fantastic IT staff. They say we can very much handle this. And finance has been very clear about what they need, and as long as it hits those points, we're good. Right now we see timesheets up to a month after that they're actually processed. We can now start downloading time daily, weekly, at the end of every pay period. So the tracking is going to be a lot more accurate for departments.
I know that I've had a number of departments that have gone through this and went through that training that have shown support for it too. That was another issue that we had last time, is nobody could get on the same page. Nobody really supported any of it, and most of them have shown pretty good support for this at this point.
Oh, we were smart. We brought in the people actually handling the payroll processing this time and showed them the product.
What's the implementation time?
12 weeks.
I agree with Heidi. We need to get into the 21st century at least. maybe the latter half of
chiseling
the
this stuff out,
20th.
people. We're using lead still. We're not chiseling it out on stone.
You might be whittling the pencil.
Maybe.
Is there a high risk of this system being fraudulent? Somebody entering a time clock thing for someone else?
So
Is it minimized, Chris?
It does. Well, Chris is going to handle the IT side since he snuck in on behind me.
That's always a problem.
Chris Emerson, CIO for the city. I think it's considerably less than your paper system. Your paper system, people can write down anything they want. They come into work 10 after 8 and they write down 8 o'clock. This system won't allow that. So I think you clear up a lot of the inadvertent fraud and the inadvertent mistakes just because you now have a system that's actually doing what it's supposed to.
Inadvertency doesn't bother me as much as malignant fraud. Deliberate attempt to clock somebody in on a day they're not working, or the day that they leave and go do something else and come back, and that has me more concerned.
Supervisors and payroll personnel in each of the departments and stuff will still have a review process where they will go into it and look at it, and hopefully bosses know that somebody wasn't there on a given day. When they look at the time clock and they see other showing that they were there when they weren't, things, that'll become a supervisor responsibility, just like it is today, really.
I would think in the summertime, John's department probably has as many employees as anybody, or a lot more. How do you feel about this, John?
I didn't attend the training. I know our staff is, not wild about it, but we'll do as we're directed.
So are we looking at all the, like, are we looking at scanning cards, or are we looking at pins, or what do you?
So we're not going with the biometric readers. I'm not sure which one Bert priced out. I think it's with a card. So like your ID badge, you would wave.
Or the pins. In our budget proposals and in the past, we have brought to you a logistical access system for our computer systems using a card. We have backed off of that considerably. In fact, we'll be bringing that up to you later this afternoon. We have a much more cost-effective solution that brings the same security that we need for logging in. But that does not mean that we can't use cards for this system or other systems.
And those entry methods, like app, computer, all of those different things, we'll be able to do all of those, right? We're not selecting options.
So the process itself would define how each of those options work. It would then be up to the department to which of those processes they wanted to use for their employees.
One of the concerns last time too was whether exempt employees would be mandated into using this all the time. I believe the decision is this time around it will be used for exception.
We haven't, and that comes down to the process that we define.
You're just looking for funding. You guys are going to figure all that stuff out. Yeah.
I don't think exempt employees ought to be exempt from this. I think they ought to have to clock in and out just like every other employee.
Well, see, this is where we derailed last time.
So I'm going to pull it back then. That is, you've heard what a member of the council would desire on that, but that's implementation.
Yes.
I think the question for us here is, are we willing to spend this money to make this move forward? And from what I've heard from the time clock, that the people that you pulled in, that they were supportive of it for the most part. I wouldn't say 100% by any means. But
I've never brought anything that's 100% support.
I know, you never have.
I challenge you to do that.
Well, you'll see a lot of me.
Yes, he's going to keep trying.
The pricing on this product is very good, by the way.
Money to do this, would we do that in this fiscal year?
I think that if you look on the agenda down here, we have we'll be going over budget amendments, and I think if the council had a desire that this and the next thing on the budget, number 10 with the stormwater, would be the time to make the decision whether or not we're going to push forward. And yeah, there is some money there that could be used for this to implement this year. But these two items, this one and the next one, really we're going to need an answer so that we can either get them in the budget amendment or wait until next year to make it happen. So
if it takes 12 weeks, that's next year.
But I could purchase within this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, implementation might not happen by 10/1.
Oh, but the purchase could.
Most contracts for IT nowadays for projects like this, payment is due the date the contract signed. The first year's payment are due the date the contract signed, not when it's implemented.
Is it the same price if we wait until the fiscal year starts, or would they raise it? Like to sign the contract, and you know what I mean?
I don't know how long the quote is valid for.
Okay.
I didn't look at the quote and see. Usually is 30 days or something like that.
Most of the time they don't hold it. I mean, they may, but
The other
if we want to do it, I would say let's get it done.
The other piece
I agree.
is the
That's what I was-
training. The 12,000 we have slotted for training here. That's what they recommend based on the expertise of our IT staff. I don't think we would be spending that whole 12,000.
I think you need to jump on it quickly because Bert went back and forth with Time Clock Plus. Their initial price was much higher than this. And Bert did a lot of negotiating over the last 2 months. And they want our business, so they just kept coming down. They kept coming down. I think we've got them down as far as we want to get them. But this is a good price.
Tell Bert, good job.
I usually do.
Let's do it.
Okay, do we have a motion, or do we?
Mayor, I move we adopt this program and move forward expeditiously.
Second.
So fast.
Do we need to say what we want done with it, like if we want it out of excess reserves or what?
I think we can have that discussion later. I think that during the amendment, I think
It's not
on the
listed.
amendment thing, we can, what?
It's not listed as a budget amendment.
Okay, well, we're going to end up getting it listed as a budget amendment, so
Ashley's listening.
I know there's no question.
I didn't put the cart before the horse. I made sure that the horse was okay with this.
Let's find out. We can ask Ashley.
Better than the cart.
We can ask Ashley where we can pull this from.
What do we do?
We've got our attorney here now.
Come on, Jerry, what do we do?
I was trying to avoid this.
Just a couple of procedural steps. Jared Johnson, City Attorney. So you can definitely give guidance to move forward, but the next step would be to declare this a sole source expenditure and sign an agreement. And those things have to happen at a regular city council meeting.
So can we, Mr. Attorney, then move forward, add it to the budget amendments here, move on that process in July when our next city council meeting will be, July 11th?
Yes, I think. The budget amendments that you have coming before you today are the proposed budget amendments that still have to be noticed, and we still have to have a public hearing and all those things. And so I would imagine, and Ashley will tell you if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that we can amend that list up until the time that we do the notice for it.
I think the notice goes out tomorrow, and so it's important for us to get it done today, but we can find out where it would come from, and then the public hearing on the budget amendment is going to be in July as well. And so I think we could probably address this just before we address the thing in the meeting July 11th.
And what I would suggest is a budget amendment for a certain amount for a certain idea or project, not a certain agreement, because the sole source determination has not been made yet.
Okay.
And we are over $50,000, and I don't believe that they went through even the informal bidding process in this. So we would have to either solicit 2 other bids from 2 other companies or determine that this is sole source, which it might very well be because of the technical aspects
They're
of it.
a preferred provider to our computer system.
Yeah, and we have a sole source letter that was supposed to be delivered either yesterday or today to Bert's email system.
I knew Ashley was listening. She couldn't stand it. She had to get in here.
Bert is out of the office, so I don't know about his email, but I know we're expecting the sole source letter from the company.
Okay, come on up to the table, Ashley. That'd be great.
Okay. Have I noted it? No. Ashley Walsh, Deputy CFO.
This started with one person.
Heather, we recognize the council actually pulled everybody up.
So we do not have this listed as a current budget amendment, but we could add it because I'm sending publication notice tomorrow morning to the paper. So I would just need to get it added to my notice.
When you are talking to us after lunch here, when you're talking to us about the budget amendments, can you have an idea of where we could take this money from?
It's like Heather said, we would either use capital contingency or reserves.
Okay. So we have the opportunity to do that. All right.
Well, I don't think you have enough reserves.
So the only question then is the sole source?
Sole source or, other bids, but it sounds like preferred doesn't automatically mean sole source, but there might be some other considerations. We have to go through that analysis, and everything is contingent on that before the agreement is signed. And even if with the budget amendment and everything else, until the agreement is signed, we're not committed to anything. So that's a process that's typical.
So can we go through that process and make sure it would fit that sole source and be in the middle of that before July 11th so that we would be able to vote on it on July 11 when we vote on the budget amendment? Because I'm assuming we can pull it out of the budget amendment on July 11th.
So you can always, if you approve it and then you guys decide not to do it, we just don't do it. You just have the authority to do it if you choose to. So you might as well, if you're thinking about doing it, you might as well add it, and that way you have the authority to spend.
Okay.
And the sole source determination is by council with recommendations from legal, but we do the analysis, you make the determination, and that has to be done at the next opportunity for that would be the 11th.
Sounds great. Thank you. Okay, so I have a motion by Council President Johnston and a second by Councilmember Cheatham down there. Ruth, could you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Johnston?
Yes.
Cheatham?
Yes.
Adamson,
Yes.
Lurick,
Yes.
Manon,
Yes.
Okay, something to add to the budget amendments then. Thank you very much.
and I did see comments.
And I did see her walk through too, and so, thank you for the presentation and moving forward with that. We are going to go ahead and break for lunch now, and after lunch, we will go to agenda item number 10, which is the stormwater improvements. So, thank you very much. Tom, how long are we going to be, Council? A half hour?
45 minutes.
We're going to say a half hour, which to us means at least 45 minutes.
It'll be 1 o'clock.
And so we'll be back as soon as we can, around 1. Thank you. Which is the stormwater improvements proposal, Don Rich Avenue and City Hall parking lot. Tom Kirkman, Deputy Public Works Director, will give a presentation on 2 proposed stormwater improvement projects. The proposed projects are A, Don Rich Avenue, and B, City Hall parking lot. Both projects include redesign and construction to alternative flooding concerns. Tom.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Tom Kirkman, Deputy Public Works Director. I'm joined by Carrie Farnsworth, our system analyst. She's the number cruncher and going to keep me on task today, so the brains of the bunch. So, Don Rich Avenue, as Heather was talking about putting the cart before the horse, we went ahead and just threw the cart in front of that horse. So we put these on as budget amendments, and then we wanted to come and talk to you guys, knowing that if you didn't approve, then we could just pull those back off. So Don Rich Avenue, I don't know if everybody's aware of where that's located. It's out off Bannock Highway, just south of Riverside Golf Course. We're going to go through some historical issues that we've had out there, some design problems, some of the short-term solutions that we've done, as well as through our engineering department, we've come, we hope, to a pretty good long-term solution. So first of all, Don Rich geographically is built in a pretty unsavory spot for water. It's in a really low spot. It's pretty much a bowl, and there's no discharges out to any of the stormwater systems. What it is relying solely on French drains, we call them, and dry wells is another word for them. So basically it's just a big vessel in the ground surrounded by washed rock. The water comes in and then it just infiltrates into the ground. Those have a very short lifespan because they fill up with silt and then they don't drain right. Plus, during a mid to large event, they get inundated because it takes time for that water to percolate out through the ground. And so when we get these areas where there's a sunken area, the water comes in faster than the ground can accept it. So over the years, and this was probably 20 years ago before my time, when the road was first designed, there was installed one dry well. And near as we can tell, about 20, 25 years ago, a second dry well was installed in that location. And we're just seeing now that more frequently we're out there addressing this problem as we get these rain events. Right now, trying to do any upgrades to those existing dry wells isn't really feasible. We have new standards that say you can't put dry wells next to sewer lines. And so if we were to go in there and try and put a new dry well in there, it really doesn't fit into our standards. Plus, it's really not a sustainable solution because the water comes in at such a high rate of speed. So some of the historic things, like I said, during mid to heavy rainstorms, anything from 1/4 of an inch per hour up to, above, we start seeing excessive ponding on the road. The dry wells fill up with water, and then it begins filling up the street, and then some of the adjacent property owners. Some of those pictures, we apologize, those were scanned in, so they're kind of hard to see, but in the bottom one, you can see that there's a row of sandbags put across the driveway of one of the residents there. When it gets to about 6 or 8 inches deep, then it goes basically into their yard and into their driveway. It's doing a bunch of damage to the roadway. It's causing curb and gutter to sink, and we call it alligator cracking. It's like the parking lot out here where it's just a bunch of cracks. It's starting to have that toll on the road there. Since we've been really tracking our records, we started that really robust in September of 15. We've went out and either pumped or sandbagged or done something out there 44 times in the last 4 years. So it's kind of a hot button for us. Anytime we see that there's any activity out south of town, we get people out there to look at it. And then the residents there also call in to dispatch. And when we go out there, there's really nowhere to pump it. And so we have to end up pumping it into these large tanker trucks, and then we take them and go dump it into the catch basin down by the river. Any questions on that? So some of the corrective stuff, there's really not a lot we can do on dry wells. We basically go in and vacuum out the debris out of them. But as they begin to fill up with silt, they just, the amount that they'll hold is restricted so much. And then the silts actually create like a boundary that doesn't let the water soak into the ground as well. So we've tried maintaining these dry wells as best we can, and then as of right now, basically our only real solution is to go out there and pump it. Any questions on that so far?
Tom, it looks like it's super special because there's snow on the ground there too. It's not just a summertime activity you get to do.
That is correct. And so we've, as you guys are well aware, our weather's been a little chaotic lately, and it just seems to be getting a little more. We've had some really big events where that road is completely full of slush. Then you get into whole different issues of clogging the drains up with slush, and it takes its toll on the guys. They get pretty cold, and it's pretty rough. We're seeing it happen 24-hour a day, 7 day a week, 365. We just don't know when it can happen. So with engineering, we've come up with a solution. This was not an easy solution. Both Merrill in engineering as well as Austin in engineering have worked really hard to put a plan together. We've looked at this for probably a year and a half, and there's really no gravity solution to get this water out. We can't get enough gravity to get this water away from these properties. So we're going to have to go to a pumping scenario. And so this kind of gives a breakdown a little bit of what we're proposing. So to your left is Bannock Highway, the one that's going diagonal, and then the first vertical street is Dawn Ridge. So right there where that red dot is where the existing dry wells are at. So what we're proposing is to put in a pumping station there. So we would use the existing dry wells that are there. They're just a big vessel, and we'd put pumps in them with floats. And then on the property owner, we're going to get an easement through with the property owner. We would put an electrical panel that runs this pumping apparatus. Then we would get a horizontal boring company. I think you guys have seen those around all over town, the ones that are putting in fiber all over. And we want to bore, it's a 2 or 4 inch line all the way across those two properties. That's that yellow line that goes across those two properties. Then we're going to bore that to a catch basin, and then it will daylight into this catch basin, and we call it a bubble up. And so what it does is it pumps in, it fills up a catch basin, it raises up to the surface, and then it'll surface flow in the curb plate down to a retention pond. Does that make sense? So the bubble up will be right there on the second vertical street where the yellow and the blue line intersect. And then the blue line is where it will flow along the curb and gutter on the surface, and it will go down to a retention pond that is behind all those properties down on Double Eagle. It's a really great, I can't commend Merrill and Austin enough of the pretty good design. This is the Pharaohs would be proud for pushing water uphill. And I think this is something that we think is going to work. The retention pond, what it's going to allow us to do is have a lot of storage capacity. Plus, we'll be able to get in there and maintain that a little bit better. We can actually remove that material as opposed to the dry well. We've spoken with the two property owners. We're looking at moving forward with easements. We had a few issues going back and forth whether it was a 15 or a 10-foot easement. But I think they're willing to get on board with this. And that's kind of the long and short of it. We're looking, it's going to be about a $100,000 project, and we're looking for street department excess reserves. I think that we've got a pretty robust reserves amount in the street department right now. If we could use that money, I think it would go a long way to helping this neighborhood out as well as improving some of our efficiencies.
Do we own that land where the retention pond would go?
That is a drainage easement. That's owned by the developer, but we've gotten an easement and they're all on board with that.
So it's an above-ground pond. It's not something that's buried.
Correct. It's a recessed, so it's an open 3 to 4 foot deep pond.
And how long would it take for that to normally recede? I'm thinking in terms of all the children in that neighborhood, finding that an attractive nuisance. And
right.
I wouldn't want the liability for drownings.
Right. So we have these retention ponds all over town, and what we do is when they're designed and built, we put in the bottom surface of the pond soils and rocks that are prone, or that help for the water to leach into the ground. And so that's one of the issues we have with retention pond maintenance, is we need to come in and pull that silt that gets on top and creates that barrier. And so it would just be an ongoing maintenance, which we have all over town, to try and keep those silts off the surface so that water could infiltrate. But for the most part, in our rules, we try not to have it sit more than 24 hours.
So it's a landowner where the current French drain is that land?
Yes, that is. And the French drains are actually in the street. We're looking at, and we spoke with him, and they're on board. The pumps will go in the French drains, which is in a manhole in the street, and then there will be a control panel that will go in the corner of their yard. That will be just a power service, and that will be where you can manually check them and do all your preventative.
I drive that road several times a day, and I've seen your people out there working, and I would think that those landowners would really jump on this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good.
And they're excited because it's difficult for them to plan a vacation if they know it's going to rain and there could be water in their garage. So I can see where it's a win on all counts. It gives us the opportunity as a street department to use our forces better than just out pumping water, watching it go down.
That's much more affordable at $100,000 than what I thought it was going to be. So congratulations on the engineering of that.
Absolutely, they did a wonderful job.
Where this bubbles up and back out into the gutter along there, is that gutter going to be overwhelmed when you have an event?
Yeah, they looked at that. It's a square back 6-inch curb, and based upon the pumping specs, it shouldn't overwhelm the curb. It should handle it.
Okay.
We're not going to guarantee this is going to 100% fix, because when Mother Nature gets mad, we're all just spectators, But this is, it is.
Good way to put it. We're just spectators.
But if we can cut those 44 calls, by a bunch, that's going to allow us to spend our time better elsewhere. So this is just kind of a quick overview. We're going to talk budget amendments here in a minute. So any questions on that one?
Looks good.
Okay, we can move on quick. Sorry, I know you got a long day. The West City Hall parking lot. So out on this side of City Hall, we've got some issues with stormwater. As you all are aware, the parking lot is very flat. We've had some standing water issues for a long time. Out on the west side of the parking lot, we're also having issues where the water is ponding on the pavement and then it's running onto adjacent property or business properties. It's been just a bad design flaw for a lot of years, for lack of better words, on this parking lot. It was never designed to handle the kind of stormwater that we get nowadays. This is just kind of a quick little overview of what it looks like. That's the flooding area that we normally see. There is no stormwater facilities at all there. It basically, it seeps in, whatever stands, it seeps in through the cracks in the asphalt, or it runs onto the adjacent property owners and fills up their drainage structures. Like I said, it is taking its toll on the asphalt, but we're seeing that in the whole parking lot. But I think this would be a good step in the right direction to try and curb some of this as we move forward to get this parking lot a little bit more under control. So once again, engineering stepped up to the plate and hit a home run. So they've come up with a good design here. We're looking at about a $100,000 project. And what this looks like is we'd be constructing 2 retention ponds. There'd be one as you enter the parking lot. And then there would be another one along the back fence, along the masonry supplier. Then along the bless you. Then along the property owner to the west, there would be a valley gutter installed that would catch that water as it ran to the west, and it would drain it to that larger pond that's along the fence line. And then once those ponds are full, if we get to that event, there will be an overflow discharge pipe that will come out of the pond in the back of the building and will run out to our existing stormwater pipe if we ever get to where we're inundated with a large event. Like I said, this is about a $100,000 project. There's funds available in emergency repair funds. That's up to you folks to make your decision. This is something that the street department could try and schedule into their schedule to get done, or we could contract that out either way. The Don Ridge project, we're going to have to contract that one out because we don't do any horizontal boring or anything like that. This is one that the street department could help out with, or we could contract it.
Tell us more about what that retention pond is going to look at right as you're coming off, pulling into the parking lot. There are some members of the council that have expressed concern about maybe some of the way that it looks out in the parking lot. And so is this going to be like a pit? Is it going to be landscaped around, or what's it going to look like? Is it going to look nice, or is it going to just kind of be functional?
Right. And so basically what we're trying to shoot for is to mimic the one on the opposite side of that approach. I know that through the Xeriscape there, that's really not designed as much to take a big supply of water. But as you get more to the south, as you first turn in the parking lot on the north side of there, we want to try and kind of mimic that on the other side. So it would be lined with river rock, something like that.
The one that I think is so not pretty is the one on at the old Westwood Mall.
Yes.
We're not going to do that.
Good.
Yeah, and we don't want to do anything like that.
We're going to just dig a hole and walk away from it.
Yeah.
We'll make it as aesthetically pleasing as we can. Yeah.
Okay.
Pleasing.
Similar plan for the one on the south side.
Correct. Yeah, that was kind of the plan, is we just line them with some of the existing vegetation or rocks that we see out on the Xeriscape out front to kind of keep that continuity, as well as the one along the back fence as well. We'd want to make that look nice too. This valley gutter, Tom, will that cause problems for vehicles that drive across that? It is super flat right there. Okay. It's super flat, so I don't think we're going to have a lot of issues with that. I think they've designed about a quarter of the way through that. They've engineered a high spot to kind of break it both ways, and then when that other pond to the north fills up, then it can run back to the south pond. So it shouldn't be a really big dip for vehicles. Usually the hardest part with valley gutters is the asphalt patchback. So you have a valley gutter and then you just do this little teeny patch. We'd want to, make a 10-foot patch or something to try and blend that out if there is any dip to it. So any questions on that?
Is this added into the budget amendment that we're talking about later?
Yeah. Okay. And so this is, we just wanted to give you a heads up of what's on the budget amendment and give you a little bit of.
Are they separate items or together on the budget?
They'll be together, or separate, excuse me. One will be a street fund issue, and then one will be like an emergency repair fund.
Both of them.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, then we'll move to agenda item number 11, proposed July budget amendments for fiscal year 2019. Finance Department staff will present to council detailed information on proposed fiscal year 2019 July budget amendments for the public hearing to be held on July 11, 2019.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Ashley Welsh, Deputy CFO. Let's see. Okay. So I'm just going to go over the proposed June budget amendments. If you have any questions, let me know. There are 26 amendments affecting 11 funds, and we will be posting the notice to go out June 19th and 26th in the paper during the work session today, and then the public hearing will be July 11th, and the ordinance consideration also. Okay, so the general fund is asking for $45,157 in amendments. So you can see Mayor and Council Department, Capital Christmas Tree Event, the AG RIP Conference, and most of these were reimbursed, and that's why we're just adding the expense in. So we got a check from somebody, and then we're adding the expense on the other side. The AIC Youth Conference and Coffee with the Mayor event. So all of these are either sponsored or reimbursed, and so we're just adding that additional authority. The building department had a retirement that wasn't budgeted for in FY19's budget, but we had set aside money in a prior year's budget. So this is an amendment basically to increase the authority for that payoff, and then you'll see it on the other side coming out of the retirement fund into the building fund. So it's not an actual increase there. Police department, they received a DNA analysis reimbursement for $4,000, so we're going to put that in the budget. Fire department had a retirement that was in excess of the budget, but then again we had additional money set aside for that person in the retirement savings fund. Are there any questions on the any general fund amendments? Nope. Okay. Other fund amendments total $3,464,756. Street fund, electrical items for signals. This was approved, I think, when they were giving their presentation, their budget presentation. They were told they could use reserves to purchase some electrical items to have in case the signal goes down. We received a reimbursement check from ICRIM for expenses for an accident on pole line in Eldridge. I think this one was added after I sent out the slides. So we received a check from ICRIM for $21,850, and we'd already paid to fix all the stuff for that accident. So this is just a reimbursement, adding it into the budget. We transferred to federal aid projects for the South Valley Road final payment. So street generally pays for anything in that federal aid projects. It's just how we pay for it. So it's like we move it there, and then Fund 70 will pay ITD. So it's kind of just a transfer of money. So you'll see that one on there twice because we need it in both places. The stormwater project on Donrich, which they just talked about, that was $100,000 to come out of reserves. Cemetery, transfer to capital improvement for the cemetery main line replacement. We had talked about this during their budget presentation also, and they were told to bring, this is 2 years worth of reserve savings to move into a capital fund so that they will have the money to pay for that project in full when it is needed.
So you're not actually spending anything, you just
We're just transferring it into a separate fund to save for it, yep. So there's not an actual expense there. Airport, replacement of terminal and shop lights to LED bulbs. So they got a rebate from Idaho Power. So we're just increasing their budget by $13,000. And then they had a software package upgrade when they moved to Windows 10. There was one of their software packages didn't work because it was so old, and so they were kind of forced to upgrade that. So I believe that's coming out of reserves. Emergency repair fund, this was for the City Hall parking lot stormwater improvements. That was $100,000 that was just presented. We have money in the emergency repair fund, and that's what we like to use it for, is for things that we're not looking forward to, but they're definitely needed. So there is money in reserves to be able to do that. Sanitation fund, the wash bay remodel. So we had talked about this in last year's budget, and with everything that was going on, we didn't get it actually added to the budget. So they were approved to do this project and to use reserves for it, but I didn't get it in the budget. So this is adding it in there. And then there was a little bit of a deficiency of the $24,000. So that completed that project, and we're just using sanitation reserves for that. And then the water fund, the ITD Yellowstone water main project was completed a while ago, and we were just told by ITD that we still owed for that. So water's part of that is $533,675. They're gonna use reserves to completely close that project out.
Where was that at?
That's down the project a few years ago, if you remember, that summer that you had to drive up and down Yellowstone with the dirt and stuff. We had actually, it was interesting, we had actually moved money and did the amendments and we're ready to pay for that, and apparently we got our wires crossed, they didn't get us the bill, something happened, and it went away, and then just recently they've been cleaning their stuff out and they said, hey, you haven't paid this, and so.
Yeah, we had done amendments, gosh, it was a while ago, a couple years ago, I think. So we had already amended for it and never ended up using it, so. And the WPC has the same, their portion of that Yellowstone project was $275,084. They also, the Griffith Road Sanitary Sewer Improvement Project. So this was approved, it was kind of like a rollover from last year's budget. We weren't able to complete it in that budget cycle, so we are asking for replacement dollars because the project is completed, but we don't actually have the authority for that specific project in the budget. So we're just replacing authority, $271,317, and then the purchase of a tanker trailer, which was also supposed to be delivered in fiscal year 18. It didn't get delivered till 19, so it's just kind of a crossover of years there. That one's $206,425. Utility billing, meter reading equipment, software upgrade, $12,000. I believe this was talked about in their budget presentation. They were going to upgrade their software, and so she was told she could use reserves for that. And then here's the street federal aid projects fund again, so you can see we're going to actually pay it out of this fund, but I don't know. It's weird. So that's just the expense again, so it's kind of on there twice. And then the retirement payoff fund, this is where the money's coming from for those retirements that weren't budgeted for. So it's kind of just a wash. We already had money sitting aside for those people. So here are the totals by fund. So an overall total of $3,509,913 will be added to the budget if these are approved. And let's see, no action immediately following the hearing on July 11th. It'll be, action will be during the same meeting, but it'll be in the ordinance section of the meeting. So just a little heads up as to what's coming.
Can you go back one slide?
Yeah.
Where's your total? Okay. Okay. So that's the adjusted?
Yes, that 21,000, yeah. That's why it's different than yours.
We talked about the IT time clock.
Yes. My recommendation would be for that to come out of capital contingency, which wouldn't even need a budget amendment.
Okay. Okay, so we don't have to worry about
There's quite a bit of money set aside there that hasn't been assigned to any project yet, and I would just recommend using that money for that expense, and then we can look at adding the expense to IT's budget for the annual.
I wanted to not burn through our capital in case of that.
We don't want to burn through it, but I don't think this is part of that capital. There's two different, explain to me we've got a capital contingency and then you've got the
general fund money set aside in the general fund, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
So we have the capital improvement fund. We budgeted for $1 million in property taxes to go in there. That can only be used for capital. And then we also set aside about $615,000 in the general fund for any contingency. So it could be personnel or something that isn't considered capital. So this is going to come from the actual capital savings, not from the general fund money that has been set aside. Is that what you were asking?
So is there a reason why we wouldn't take it out of the other?
We could take it out of whichever you would like, and we wouldn't have to do a budget amendment for either of those two.
So if we have excess reserves though, why, just so we don't have to add it to the amendment, is that the reason to not?
If
do
you're
it out of
using
reserves?
reserves, yeah, you would have to add it. But the general, if you're using general fund money, we have that already budgeted.
We have the authority to spend the $600,000. We just haven't spent it, and we can just put this in that.
Right.
So I think the
So
authority is there
I
to
guess
spend it.
either way, your two options won't need a budget amendment. So you guys can, you still have time to think about that as to where you want to pay it from.
Okay.
That's for our payroll
Fair enough.
thing.
Okay. All right, any other questions?
Not seeing any. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right, then we will move to agenda item number 12, proposed ordinance modifications. Planning and engineering staff will present proposed changes to the following ordinances. A, subdivision ordinance, municipal code title 16. B, zoning ordinance, municipal code 17.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the council. Carl Anderson, City of Pocatello Planning. I'm going to hand out some copies of the item currently attached to the agenda. They are in color. It may help what you're viewing.
Thank you.
Matthew Lewis, Senior Planner with Planning.
So staff is before you this afternoon to present proposed changes under two separate items. Item A, which is Title 16, the subdivision ordinance. Item B, which is Title 17, the zoning ordinance. Some of these changes are to address, minor modifications or clean up some areas of the code. So beginning with A, and feel free to stop me if you have any questions that come up. The subdivision ordinance was last amended in 2016 and modified sections of the code, including the short plat process, and also added the property line adjustment process and the requirement for pre-application review for all subdivision applications. Since that time, in working on a variety of subdivision applications, staff has identified some areas that need to be addressed, and I'll kind of just go over some of the high level and won't get into the weeds too much. After the first recommendation is to alter the pre-application review process, making the pre-application optional and at staff discretion. The reasoning for this is some applications, right now all applications are required to have pre-application review, so whether that's a short plat application versus a preliminary and final plat. For instance, if you have a 2-lot short plat application that's relatively clean, that would be required to go to our site plan review committee for the pre-application review, which would be the same for an application coming in for a 30-lot subdivision. So right now, staff's recommending that be optional and at staff discretion.
Making the process simpler is what you're saying.
That's correct.
Faster?
Faster.
For the developer?
Faster for the developer, potentially, yes. The second item here is increase the requirement for a traffic impact study for a preliminary plat, while also allowing for some flexibility at the discretion of public works staff. So this would do the current requirement for traffic impact study is if it has 100 peak hour trips. This would add the requirement there that if the peak hour trips are already met for the outlets for that current subdivision. So if you have, let's say, divisions 1 and 2 don't get you to your 100 peak hour trips, but division 3 does, and they have the same outlet, you may need to have that traffic impact study at that time. Staff has also added that this requirement may be waived upon the review by our public works staff, pending the addition of a traffic analysis, which is it's not as in-depth.
Kind of low-level traffic, and rather than the traffic impact analysis study is much more involved than an analysis.
The third item here is modify the request for a public hearing to more closely align with Idaho State Code. 4, standardize the application requirements for a preliminary plat and final plat in order to improve the consistency of the application requirements and the process for the review of each. One of the things to note here is this would reduce the requirement for the number of full-size plats that would be submitted at preliminary plat. Right now, I believe the requirement is for 10. We would ask that only 1 be submitted and the addition of a PDF copy for that. So, remove the requirement for a surety bond to be released by City Council upon the acceptance of public infrastructure improvements. So this is for plats that have gone through either short plat or final plat that wish to record prior to all required improvements being in place, in which they would have a surety bond in place. Right now, code says that our public works staff basically put together a punch list and go over that with the application and review it. And if they have met all the requirements of that punch list, they would then schedule a meeting with council to release that bond. Staff is proposing that that requirement to go to council for the bond be released be removed, which may save the developers some time on an application like that. And then the sixth item here is just minor formatting modifications, deleting and consolidating duplicate definitions, correcting text. Section 16.28 was renumbered, and adding some flexibility for instances where it says the Public Works Director, also adding or their designee, be allowed to complete the review in some instances.
It looks like you're helping the public here. This is awesome.
Just to clarify on number 4, we're not in any way getting rid of the requirement
That's
for
correct.
the bond. It's just how they get released from it when they've
for the
met
surety bond?
all the requirements.
That's correct.
Okay.
Basically just how that bond would be released.
That they don't have to come back to us to be released.
That's correct. They'd be able to work directly with staff once they've met their obligations for that bond to be released. And in the instance that a developer was uncomfortable with staff's recommendation at the time, they could always request to be before council.
Did I read that correctly? The city's still going to keep 15%?
It's 1.5 times. I think it's 1.25. So if you have $100,000 that's out there for work to be done, it's 125% above that.
I mean, in the reimbursement, there was a schedule of 20, 20, 20, and 25 for a total of 85% release. So we're keeping 15.
We haven't made any changes to the amounts that we would currently.
I didn't understand that part.
And that's in the chart that you're referring to?
Yeah, I don't see it now, but I thought I saw it.
So I believe that,
There it is.
the city would retain 15% of the original surety bond upon the proper execution of the required warranty bond pursuant to subsection E of this section. The city would release any remaining
they will
balances.
get it all back then.
Any remaining balances would be released, is my understanding.
Okay. Yes.
Mayor, I am totally in favor of streamlining our processes and making things more efficient, so I would move to instruct staff to proceed with preparing these changes for us to consider at a future meeting.
Do we want before I accept a second, do we want to hold that motion until we hear the other one, or do you want to do 2 different motions?
2 motions appropriate.
2 motions are appropriate, okay. We have a motion by Councilwoman Adamson and a second by Johnston. Ruth, could you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Adamson?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes.
Cheatham?
Yes.
Lurick?
Yes.
Manon?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
So moving to item B, which is Title 17, the zoning ordinance. The current zoning ordinance that we have in place was adopted in 2008, and there have been and the only code changes coming in the form of slope standards, which are located under 1705. The comprehensive plan was last updated in 2015, and since that time, staff has been working to align our zoning ordinance with the current comprehensive plan. Most of the proposals you have before you are called out as. I think of it, I'm not a software engineer, but I kind of think of it as if it were a patch to the code to make sure that the code is operating in a way that suits our current needs. So the proposal before you is to mostly clean up the ordinance, but there are some larger changes here that I'll highlight. And if any questions come up, please feel free to stop me. So the first one actually is to consolidate similar code sections to make the sections more user-friendly and remove any inconsistencies. You'll see that mostly under section 1703, which are where you will find our use matrix for all residential, commercial, industrial uses, as well as our bulk and placement standards. Right now, all of those uses are separated into 3 different sections under 1703, along with development standards that are particular to each zone. So what staff has done has consolidated all the uses into one use matrix, all of the bulk placement requirements into one matrix, and also moved the development standards into 1705, which is Title 1705 Development Standards. So it's trying to consolidate everything and remove potential for error. This allows a more linear review process for both staff and members of the public. So that's kind of the first big change you'll see here. The second is staff is recommending that we remove the neighborhood commercial zoning district from Title 17. The reason being, we do not currently have a parcel within the city limits that has this zoning designation. 3, remove
what would that be?
It's a little step higher than the residential commercial professional. So it was a district that was kind of in between, or the thought process was between the RCP and the CG, and we just have never used that district.
Can you point something out that would qualify that we might be familiar with?
It would probably be like a land use type difference. So, say for instance, you could have a gas station or a convenience store in RCP, but a gas station with the convenience store, say like Common Sense, would have been a conditional use permit. In NC, it probably would have been permitted outright. That's just an example.
Is there any time in the future where we would need this at all?
Well, we've had it since 2008.
And we haven't used it.
To be honest, I just don't. We've talked about it with staff and so forth, and we think that one of the two, either the RCP or the CG, is going to cover the needs as they have.
With the special use permit?
Yeah, you still have conditional use permits and so forth. Yep.
Say Country Corner out there on Bannock Highway.
Mm-hmm.
What is that zoning?
That is RCP.
Okay. So.
And you remember way back when
back.
Yeah, that went through conditional use permit process. So that's a good example of the RCP, where the convenience store was permitted outright, but once they added the gas pumps and all that required the conditional use permit.
Good.
Okay.
The third item you'll see here is staff is currently recommending that the land use exception process from the code be removed. The reason for this being, basically, the land use exception is eligible to bypass the conditional use permit, variance, and sign exception process in the interest of time, complexity of the application, and for the convenience of the applicant. This was put in place when these types of application, and it's my understanding, this was put in place when these applications required a recommendation from either the hearing examiner or the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then were then brought to the council for that decision. This was put in place to bypass that initial meeting and go straight to council. Right now, all of those applications would actually have the hearing and decision either at the hearing examiner or Planning and Zoning Commission. So that second meeting is no longer necessary. Should the applicant appeal the decision made at any of these previous meetings, they could still appeal that decision to the City Council. So that's why we're recommending that.
Yeah, which the council's had several sign exceptions have been before you. So yeah, it's just not needed.
The venting of these has been primarily with staff, or have we had contractors and others involved?
So at this point, most of this has been through staff. Staff would like to take these recommendations to some of our frequent flyers to get feedback. So that would be a next step before a final draft.
Okay.
What you laughing about down there?
Frequent flyers.
I thought that was very clever.
Yeah, so did we.
The fourth one here, again, similar to Title 16, minor formatting modifications, so renumbering, consolidating definitions into the definition section, just kind of trying to minor cleanups here and there. A couple of things that I don't believe are listed for you that I wanted to touch on, just to highlight. One, we're also recommending that the conditional use permit section be amended to more closely align with state code. That's specific to regarding the conditions which may be attached to a special use permit. So right now, under our conditional use permit section, it outlines what types of conditions the hearing body may attach to a conditional use permit. State code had an additional condition which our municipal code does not contain. I don't remember the verbatim on it. I can pull it up. And then also clarified in another section on that. The second would be regarding administrative variances. So kind of two changes here. One would be to allow for a minimum lot size variance. And so these are relating to variance applications that are changed up to 10%. The minimum lot size minor variance used to be in place, but has since been removed from our current. So it's not eligible for a lot that is within 10% of the required, but does not meet that requirement.
So a tiny house could go on a tiny lot.
That's essentially. Yes.
I thought that.
The one bigger change to this, though, would be that administrative variances would actually be required to meet the criteria for review for a full variance. Basically, in staff's understanding, this is to more closely align with state code. State code states that a variance application be granted when there is undue hardship. So what this would essentially do is close a loophole within this section where if a property owner wishes to, one example would be a setback. A garage is currently required to be set back 25 feet from all public right-of-ways, all streets and public right-of-way. If a developer owns property all around this property, they could, in theory, set it back 22.5 feet with the administrative variance, and they own the properties adjacent, so they can sign off on all of that. So this would basically be to clean that up and more closely align with state code where there needs to be an undue hardship for a variance application. And then two other things. One would be kind of coming from a little bit from what we learned from our Terry First project, would be to allow for upper story housing in the historic warehouse district for the LI and light industrial and industrial districts specific to those districts. And that's a note that's been added there. And then also under the parking section, I'll let Matt take this one, just to clarify. But basically amending the parking requirement for the CC, the central commercial, and also in the historic warehouse district. For new developments. Right now under the CC, for existing buildings where a change in use is proposed, the existing parking may remain. What staff is proposing that for new development in the CC and the historic warehouse district that no parking basically be required.
Yeah, and so basically, the Old Town area, we have the UP parking lot. On-street parking. So if for any reason, if a building were to burn down, be destroyed, and somebody came in and rebuilt it, the exception to that would be exactly that. They could build the building, but they would not be required to provide the off-street parking. We think that makes sense considering the nature of the downtown and the warehouse district as well.
It's a good move. I've heard a lot of complaints about exactly that, about Old Town.
UP parking lot, that land is still owned by the Union Pacific?
I believe so. And I think that there's a lease of some sort, I believe. But I'm not, it's been a while since do you know anything about that?
I know that it's owned by UP, and UP has allowed us to use it as parking for our downtown area.
We'd be in real trouble without that parking downtown.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Could I ask about 1705 development standards?
Absolutely.
Third page. Exactly what does that mean? I think we need to make a move toward more no grass type of landscaping and less trees. We need to make a move toward more water conservation, I guess is the point. And I'm wondering, it says the remaining ground cover may consist. What is remaining? I mean, what's the first part of that?
Yeah, so just some recent examples, Councilman, is probably the new McDonald's that's on South 5th. So you can see it doesn't look like a lot now because, it's just been constructed and so forth. But most of that ground, the ground has non-vegetative cover. But you have vegetation, like different bushes and stuff that 2 years from now will grow over. And so the 50% non-vegetative cover is that. So you could use decorative rock, you can use river rock, you could use, bark, that type of thing. You still have the requirement of trees. But it's really pointed towards, and really this is a carry on from the existing code where we've allowed some flexibility with regards to non-vegetative cover and drought tolerant type
It is
landscaping.
50%. That's what wasn't here, and I couldn't see what remaining was.
Yeah, okay. We'll take a look at that and make sure it's clear.
Any other questions?
I like this.
I like the cleaning up of it.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move that we approve the proposed updates and modifications to Title 17 zoning regulations as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Lurick and a second by Cheatham. Ruth, could you please call the roll?
Lurick,
Yes.
Cheatham,
Yes.
Adamson,
Yes.
Johnston,
Yes.
Manon.
Yes.
Let's have more.
Super. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then we'll move to agenda item 13, and we are adjourned from this meeting, and we will get ready for our budget presentation.